Family is forever. Blood runs thicker than water. That's what Freya's mother whispered to her every night before bed, fingers brushing through her daughter's dark hair with what seemed like tenderness. But when you became the barren daughter in a world where fertility meant survival, you learned that blood meant nothing compared to the price of a womb. And Freya would discover that her parents' love had always come with a receipt, one that would be cashed in the moment she became worthless to them. The Ashwood Pack territory smelled like pine and morning dew, but in the small cottage at the edge of the woods, it reeked of disappointment. Freya sat at the wooden table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Across from her, her mother Arya wouldn't meet her eyes. Her father Magnus stood by the window, his broad shoulders tense, staring out at nothing. "It's been 3 years, her mother finally said, voice soft but sharp as a blade. 3 years since your first shift, Freya. 3 years, and still." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Still no heat, still no scent, still no sign that Freya could bear children. "I know, Mother." Freya's voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. She'd practiced this composure, perfected it over countless similar conversations. The healers said some wolves are late bloomers. It could still, late bloomers. Magnus turned from the window, and Freya flinched at the bitterness in his eyes. "You're 22 years old. Your sister presented at 19. Ah, yes, Celeste. Beautiful, fertile, perfect Celeste." As if summoned by thought alone, the door burst open and Freya's younger sister swept in like a spring breeze, all golden hair and radiant smiles. She practically glowed, literally. It was something that happened to she-wolves during their fertile periods, a biological advertisement that screamed, "I can give you strong pups. Mother, father." Celeste's voice was honey and bells. "The most wonderful news. Elder Rothman's son has asked permission to court me. His third son, Garrett, the one who's training to be a pack warrior. Isn't that marvelous?" Arya's face transformed, the harsh lines smoothing into genuine joy. "Oh, my darling, that's wonderful. The Rothmans are such a strong bloodline." Freya felt her mother's happiness like a physical weight pressing down on her chest. She managed to smile. "Congratulations, Celeste." Her sister finally seemed to notice her, and something flickered in those bright blue eyes. Pity, maybe. Or worse, smugness disguised as concern. "Thank you, Freya. I'm sure your time will come too. Perhaps not with a warrior, but maybe a nice Omega male who wouldn't mind, well, you know. A nice Omega male who wouldn't mind a barren mate." The words hung unspoken, but clear as day. "Celeste," Magnus said, his tone holding a warning. But it was a gentle warning, the kind reserved for a beloved daughter who'd simply been a bit tactless. When he looked at Freya, his eyes held something far colder. "Freya, your mother and I need to speak with you." "Alone," Celeste floated out with a sympathetic glance that felt like salt in a wound. The silence that followed was suffocating. "There's a trader coming through next week," Magnus said finally. "From the Blood Moon Pack in the north. They're looking for workers, household staff for their Alpha's estate." Freya's blood ran cold. "Traders? They pay well," Arya added quickly, still not meeting her daughter's eyes. "Very well. And it's not like you have prospects here, darling. With your condition, no wolf in Ashwood will mate you. You'd spend your life alone, a burden on the pack resources." "A burden," Freya repeated the word slowly, tasting its bitterness. "Is that what I am to you?" "Don't be dramatic." Her mother's voice sharpened. "We're giving you an opportunity. The Blood Moon Pack is wealthy, powerful. You'll have a better life there than you'd ever have here as an unmated, barren she-wolf. People will whisper about you forever, Freya." "Is that what you want?" "What I want." Freya stood, her chair scraping harshly against the wooden floor. "What I want is for my parents to love me regardless of whether I can produce grandchildren for them." Magnus's face hardened. "Love doesn't put food on the table. Love doesn't strengthen pack alliances. You're old enough to understand how the world works, Freya. Every wolf must contribute to the pack's survival. Celeste will bring us strong alliances through her matches. You," he gestured vaguely at her, "you bring us nothing but questions and sideways looks. So you're selling me." The words came out flat, dead. "We're giving you a chance at a new life," Arya insisted. "The trader is offering a generous sum that will help secure Celeste's dowry, ensure she makes a match worthy of her bloodline, and you'll be taken care of in the Blood Moon Pack. It's better this way. For everyone. For everyone but me," Freya thought. She looked at her parents, really looked at them, and saw the truth she'd been denying for years. Their love had always been conditional. Their affection had always come with invisible price tags, and the moment she'd failed to deliver on their biological expectations, she'd become expendable. "When?" Her voice came out hoarse. "The trader arrives in 3 days," Magnus said. "You'll leave with him at dawn 4 days from now. Pack light. You won't need much where you're going." Freya turned and walked to her small room, each step feeling like she was walking through water. She heard her mother call after her, "Freya, don't be upset, this is for the best." But the words seemed to come from very far away. She closed the door and leaned against it, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Her parents were trading her away like livestock. Not selling, they'd never use that word. But the transaction was the same. She was being exchanged for coin, her value determined not by her intelligence, her kindness, her skills, but by the emptiness of her womb. Freya slid down to the floor, pressing her palms against her eyes, but she didn't cry. She'd learned years ago that tears changed nothing. Instead, she let the cold numbness wash over her, that familiar emotional anesthesia that had gotten her through countless humiliations. Through the thin walls, she could hear Celeste chattering excitedly about wedding plans, about the dress she'd wear, about the pups she'd have. Her mother's warm, encouraging responses, her father's proud laughter, the sounds of a family that no longer included her. Outside her window, the moon was rising, the same moon that was supposed to bless all wolves, that was supposed to make them part of something larger than themselves. Freya stared at it and felt nothing but its cold, indifferent light. 3 days until the trader came. 3 days until she stopped being a daughter and became a commodity. 3 days until her life as she knew it ended. "Family is forever," her mother used to say. Freya finally understood the truth. Forever had an expiration date, and hers had just arrived. If stories like Freya's remind you that worth can't be destroyed by cruelty, subscribe to join others who believe hidden strength deserves recognition. Chapter 2. The Trade. The 3 days passed like a funeral march, slow, inevitable, suffocating. Freya moved through the cottage like a ghost, packing her meager belongings into a worn leather satchel, a few changes of clothes, the silver hairpin her grandmother had given her before she died, the only family member who'd ever looked at Freya with unconditional love. A book of old pack histories she'd read so many times the pages were soft as fabric. Everything she owned fit into one bag. Everything she was worth fit into a purse of coins. On the second day, she'd tried one last time. She'd found her mother in the kitchen, kneading dough for Celeste's favorite honey bread. And the domesticity of the scene had given her hope. "Mother," she'd said softly, "please, don't do this. I can work harder. I can help more around the house. I can—" "Freya." Arya's hands had stilled in the dough, but she didn't turn around. "This conversation is over. You're being selfish. Think about your sister's future. Think about the pack. What about my future? You don't have one here." The words were delivered with the flat finality of an execution. Not the kind that matters, anyway. "At least in the Blood Moon Pack, you'll have purpose. You'll have work. You'll have a roof over your head without being a constant reminder to everyone of what you lack." Freya had left the kitchen without another word. Now, on the 4th morning, she stood at the edge of the village square, as dawn painted the sky in shades of gray and pale pink. The trader's wagon was already there, a large, enclosed cart pulled by 2 massive draft horses. Other young wolves stood nearby, mostly omegas and a few betas who'd fallen on hard times. All of them wore the same expression, resigned despair. The trader himself was a thin, shrewd-looking man named Corvus. His eyes were too sharp, his smile too wide, and he moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. He checked each worker against a list, nodding with satisfaction. "Freya Ashwood?" he called out. She stepped forward, her satchel clutched in her hands. Corvus looked her up and down with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating livestock. Beta she-wolf, 22, unmarked, childless. He sniffed the air slightly, and his lip curled. Ah yes, the barren one. Your father was very forthcoming about your condition. Don't worry, girl. The Blood Moon Pack has plenty of use for wolves who can't breed. Kitchens, laundries, groundskeeping. There's always work for willing hands. The words should have stung, but Freya had gone numb. She simply nodded. Excellent. Climb in the back. She turned to look one last time at her parents. They stood at the edge of the square far enough away to maintain plausible deniability that they cared, close enough to ensure the transaction was completed. Arya lifted her hand in a small wave. Magnus's face was stone. Celeste wasn't there at all. She was probably still asleep, dreaming of wedding dresses and warrior mates. This is really happening, Freya thought. They're really letting me go. She climbed into the wagon. Inside, rough wooden benches lined the walls, and small barred windows let in slivers of light. 5 other wolves were already seated, 3 young Omega males, clearly sold by families who had too many sons, and 2 beta females who wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. The wagon lurched forward, and through the small window, Freya watched the Ashwood Pack territory disappear behind them. The cottage where she'd grown up, the forest where she'd learned to shift, the community that had decided she had no value. All of it, fading into the distance. First time? One of the Omega males asked. He was young, maybe 19, with kind eyes and nervous hands. Freya nodded. Me too. I'm Jasper. My family had 6 sons, and I was the runt. They kept saying they'd find a place for me, but... He shrugged, trying for nonchalance and failing. Guess the trader's coin was more appealing than another mouth to feed. I'm Freya. She hesitated, then added, I'm barren. Or they think I am. That's why they sold me. One of the beta females looked up sharply. They sold you for being infertile? That's... She stopped, seeming to realize there was no point in calling it cruel when they were all sitting in the same wagon for similar reasons. I'm Mira. I refused an arranged mating to an alpha's son who was known for beating his servants. My family said I was ungrateful and destroyed their chance at a better alliance. Around the wagon, similar stories emerged. The other Omega males had been considered too weak, too small, not aggressive enough for warrior training. The second beta female had been caught teaching herself to read. Apparently her pack believed education made females uppity and unmarriageable. They were all the unwanted, the inconvenient, the ones who didn't fit into neat little boxes. How long is the journey? Freya asked Corvus through the small window that separated the back of the wagon from the driver's seat. 4 days to the Blood Moon Pack borders, he called back. Another 2 days to the capital where the Alpha King resides. You'll be processed there, assigned to your permanent positions. The Alpha King? Jasper's eyes widened. I thought we were just going to be household staff. Corvus laughed, a sound like coins rattling in a tin cup. Oh, you will be. But all workers in the Blood Moon Pack serve at the pleasure of the Alpha King. He likes to personally approve all new acquisitions, make sure they're suitable. Something about the way he said suitable made Freya's skin crawl. The journey was exactly as miserable as she'd expected. They stopped twice a day, once at midday for a brief meal of hard bread and water, once at night to sleep in whatever clearing or abandoned barn Corvus deemed acceptable. They were allowed out of the wagon to relieve themselves under guard, as if any of them had anywhere to run to. On the second night, huddled in a barn that smelled of moldy hay, Mira whispered, I heard stories about the Alpha King. They say he's the most powerful alpha in 5 territories. They say he's never taken a mate, because no she-wolf is worthy of him. They say... She lowered her voice even further. They say he's cursed, that the moon goddess herself touched him with some kind of darkness, because of something his father did. That's just rumors. One of the Omega males, Theo, scoffed. Powerful alphas always get wild stories told about them. Maybe, Mira said. But they also say he's been searching for something, someone, for years now, and that's why Corvus brings him workers. He's not just looking for servants. He's looking for something else. Looking for what? Freya asked. Mira shrugged. No one knows. But I heard that the she-wolves who catch his attention either end up elevated to positions of power, or they disappear entirely. The words hung in the cold barn air like a threat. Freya pulled her thin blanket tighter around herself, and stared up at the holes in the barn roof where stars peeked through. The moon goddess's lights, distant and cold. What kind of place am I going to? She wondered. And what will become of me there? But even as fear curled in her stomach, another feeling stirred beneath it. Something she'd thought her parents had beaten out of her years ago. Defiance. She'd spent her whole life being told she was worthless, because she couldn't breed, being told she was broken, being told she should be grateful for whatever scraps of affection were thrown her way. But maybe, just maybe, her parents had done her a favor by sending her away. Maybe in this new place, far from people who'd known her only as the barren daughter, she could be something else, someone else. Maybe she could finally discover what she was actually worth. The thought was small and fragile, like a candle flame in a storm, but it was there, and Freya clung to it as the wagon rolled north, carrying her toward an unknown future and an alpha king who was searching for something. She just hoped that whatever he was looking for, it wasn't another person to break. Chapter 3. The Blood Moon Capital. On the 6th day, the landscape changed. The rolling hills and dense forests of the southern territories gave way to something darker, more imposing. The trees here were ancient, massive pines that blocked out the sun. Their branches twisted into shapes that looked almost deliberate, almost watchful. The air itself felt different, charged with a power that made Freya's wolf stir restlessly inside her for the first time in weeks. "We're in Blood Moon territory now," Corvus announced, and there was a new note in his voice. Respect, maybe, or fear. Through the small window, Freya caught glimpses of pack wolves moving through the forest, massive creatures, larger than any she'd seen in Ashwood. Their eyes glowed in the shadows, tracking the wagon's progress with unsettling intelligence. "They're huge," Jasper whispered, pressing his face to the window. "I've never seen wolves that size." "The Blood Moon pack is the oldest in the territories," Theo said quietly. He'd been silent for most of the journey, but now his voice held a scholar's reverence. "They say their bloodline goes back to the first wolves who were blessed by the moon goddess herself. Their alphas are born with power that would take other wolves decades to cultivate." "And their alpha king?" Mira asked. Theo's expression darkened. "They say he's the strongest alpha born in 300 years, that he could kill another alpha with nothing but his will. That he doesn't tolerate gossip about him from chattel," Corvus snapped from the front. "I'd suggest you all keep your mouths shut once we reach the capital. The Alpha King values silence and obedience above all else. Speak only when spoken to. Keep your eyes down. And for the love of the goddess, don't do anything stupid." The wagon fell silent. 2 hours later, they crested a hill, and the capital came into view. Freya's breath caught. She'd expected something intimidating, certainly, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. The city sprawled across a valley, built in concentric circles around a central point, the Alpha King's palace. And what a palace it was. It rose like a mountain of black stone and silver spires, impossibly tall, impossibly grand. Waterfalls cascaded down its sides from some unseen source, and even from this distance, Freya could see the shimmer of protective magic woven around it like a spider's web. The outer rings of the city were more modest stone buildings, housing markets, workshops, residential areas, but everything was organized with military precision. Streets laid out in perfect patterns, gardens maintained to exacting standards. This wasn't just a pack. This was an empire. "Welcome to Silvercrest," Corvus said, and for once, his sardonic tone was absent. "Capital of the Blood Moon pack and seat of the Alpha King's power. Try not to embarrass yourselves." They entered through massive gates guarded by warriors in dark armor. The guards barely glanced at Corvus clearly. They knew him, but their eyes lingered on the cargo in the back of the wagon. Assessing, calculating, Freya forced herself not to look away. She'd spent too many years shrinking under disapproving gazes. Whatever happened here, she wouldn't make herself smaller. The wagon wound through the city streets, and despite her circumstances, Freya couldn't help but be amazed. The Blood Moon Pack was wealthy in ways the Ashwood Pack could never imagine. The buildings were made of cut stone, not rough timber. The wolves they passed wore fine clothes, not homespun fabric. Even the Omega servants visible in doorways and gardens looked well-fed, well-dressed. If I have to be a servant, Freya thought, at least I'll be a servant somewhere that values its people. The thought felt like a betrayal of the others in the wagon, but she couldn't help it. Finally, they reached a large stone building near the palace, clearly administrative, with the crisp efficiency of a military operation. Corvus pulled the wagon to a stop and climbed down. "Out," he ordered. "Form a line." They stumbled out, stiff from days of travel. Blinking in the late afternoon Sunday, Freya's legs almost gave out when her feet hit solid ground, but she steadied herself. Beside her, Jasper looked green, and Mira's hands were shaking. A woman emerged from the building, tall, severe, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a brutal bun. She wore a dark uniform marked with silver insignia that proclaimed her as someone important. Her eyes swept over them with the same clinical assessment Corvus had used, but sharper, more intelligent. "6 this time, Corvus?" Her voice was crisp, businesslike. "I expected 8. 2 didn't survive the journey from the Eastern Territories," Corvus said with a shrug. "Weak constitutions. These 6 are hardy though. Good workers." Freya's stomach turned. 2 didn't survive, said as casually as discussing broken wagon wheels. "Very well, I'll process them." The woman stepped forward, and now Freya could see the name embroidered on her uniform. Magistrate Helena, Royal Household. Helena moved down the line, checking each of them with brisk efficiency. She examined their teeth, their hands, tested their reflexes. When she reached Freya, her eyes narrowed. Beta she-wolf, unmarked. She sniffed delicately. "No fertility scent. Barren?" "Yes, magistrate," Freya said, keeping her voice steady. "Pity. You're pretty enough that you might have been considered for the harem program." Helena made a note on her clipboard. "Still, we always need workers. Can you read?" Freya hesitated. In some packs, admitting to education as a female was dangerous. But something about Helena's sharp intelligence made her take a risk. "Yes, magistrate. I can read and write. I've studied pack histories and healing herbs as well." Helena's eyebrows rose. "Have you now? That's unusual for a souled wolf. Most of them are illiterate." She made another note. "This one, more substantial. We may have better use for you than the kitchens. We'll see." She moved on to the others, completing her assessments with the same efficiency. When she finished, she stepped back and addressed them all. "You are now property of the Blood Moon Pack, assigned to the royal household. You will be given quarters, uniforms, and work assignments within the next 2 days. But first..." She paused dramatically. "The Alpha King has requested to personally inspect all new acquisitions. You will be bathed, dressed appropriately, and brought to the throne room this evening." Jasper made a small, frightened sound. Helena's lips twitched in what might have been sympathy. "The inspection is routine. Stand straight, answer honestly if he speaks to you, and do not meet his eyes unless he commands it. Most of the time, he simply looks you over and confirms your assignments. It's a formality, most of the time," Freya noted. "But not always." "Come," Helena said, turning back toward the building. "We have 4 hours to make you presentable." They were separated by gender and led to bathing rooms. Actual rooms with heated water in large copper tubs, soap that smelled of lavender and mint, and soft towels. After 6 days in the wagon, it was heaven. Freya sank into the hot water and let it wash away the grime, the fear, the exhaustion. For just a few moments, she let herself feel nothing but the physical comfort of being clean. A servant, an older Omega woman with kind eyes, helped her wash her hair and provided her with a simple but clean dress in deep blue. It wasn't fancy, but it was the nicest thing Freya had worn in years. "First time meeting the Alpha King?" the servant asked, as she helped Freya dry her hair. "Yes. Don't be too frightened, dear. He's intimidating, certainly, but he's fair. If you're respectful and honest, you'll be fine." The woman's hand stilled for a moment. "Though I will say, in all my years here, I've never quite understood what he's looking for when he inspects the new workers. He always seems to be searching for something, someone. That's what I heard, Freya said quietly. The woman smiled sadly. Well, let's hope he finds it someday. A king without what he seeks is a dangerous thing. 2 hours later, Freya stood in a line with the other 5 workers outside massive bronze doors that led to the throne room. They'd all been bathed and dressed, the males in simple dark tunics, the females in modest dresses. They looked less like chattel now, and more like actual people. But Freya's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. On the other side of those doors was the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 5 territories. The man who was searching for something unknown, and she was about to be inspected like livestock at a fair. The doors swung open. Enter, a voice commanded, deep, resonant, carrying a weight of authority that made Freya's wolf immediately want to bare her throat in submission. They walked forward into a throne room that stole the breath from her lungs. It was massive, with vaulted ceilings that disappeared into shadows far above. Columns of black marble lined the sides, carved with wolves in various poses of power and grace. Silver veins ran through the stone like frozen lightning. At the far end, on a dais of 3 steps, sat a throne made of what looked like silver and obsidian fused together, and on that throne sat a man who made everything else in the room disappear. Even from a distance, even with her eyes properly lowered, Freya could feel the power radiating from him like heat from a forge. He was tall, impossibly tall for a man, though perhaps not for an alpha of his lineage. His hair was black as a raven's wing, falling just past his shoulders. His face was carved from the same unforgiving stone as his palace. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that caught her, even though she wasn't supposed to look. They were silver, not gray, not light blue, actual metallic silver, glowing with an inner light that marked him as touched by the moon goddess herself. And they were looking directly at her. Freya's breath stopped. The Alpha King rose from his throne with fluid grace, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He descended the dais steps slowly, each footfall echoing in the cavernous space. Magistrate Helena bowed deeply. Your Majesty, the new workers, as requested. But the Alpha King didn't acknowledge her. His silver eyes remained fixed on Freya with an intensity that made her skin prickle and her wolf whine in confusion. He moved down the line, supposedly inspecting each worker, but Freya could sense his attention never truly left her. When he finally stood directly in front of her, she had to fight every instinct not to run. Look at me, he commanded, his voice low and dangerous. Freya raised her eyes slowly, her heart in her throat. Up close, he was even more devastating. Power rolled off him in waves that made her knees weak. This wasn't just an alpha. This was something more. Something ancient and primal that her wolf recognized on an instinctive level. This was a predator. An apex predator. And she was very, very small prey. Their eyes met, and the world seemed to stop. The Alpha King's eyes widened fractionally, the first crack in his stone composure. His hand came up slowly, as if moving without his permission, and his fingers brushed her cheek, with a gentleness that contradicted everything about his imposing presence. You, he breathed. And there was something in his voice that sounded like recognition, like relief, like the end of a very long search. What is your name? Freya, Your Majesty. She managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Freya, he said it like a prayer, like a curse, like the answer to a question he'd been asking for lifetimes. His thumb traced her jawline, and power sparked where he touched her actual visible silver light that made Helena gasp and the other workers step back in fear. The Alpha King's eyes never left Freya's face. How long have you been barren? The question should have been humiliating, but the way he asked it with genuine curiosity rather than disgust made it feel like something else entirely. They say 3 years, Your Majesty, since my first shift. They say. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, bitter and knowing. But you don't believe them. It wasn't a question. Freya swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. But something about his silver eyes made her speak the truth she'd never voiced to anyone. I don't know what I believe, Your Majesty. I only know what I've been told. The Alpha King stared at her for a long moment, and Freya felt like he was seeing into her soul, reading every secret, every hurt, every hidden hope. Finally, he turned to Helena, and his voice was pure command. Cancel all work assignments for this one. She stays in the palace, guest quarters, not servant quarters, and send for the royal healer immediately. Helena's face showed her shock. Your Majesty? Did I stutter, Magistrate? No, Your Majesty. Of course not. Right away. Helena bowed again, but her eyes were wide with speculation. The Alpha King turned back to Freya, and she saw something burning in those silver depths that both terrified and thrilled her. You are not barren, Freya, he said quietly, for her ears alone. You've been dormant, waiting. Waiting for what? She whispered. His smile was sharp and possessive and full of dark promise. For me. Chapter 4. The Dormant Wolf. Freya's world tilted sideways. Dormant. Waiting. For him. The words echoed in her skull as servants, real servants, not fellow workers, escorted her from the throne room. She caught a glimpse of Jasper's stunned face, Mira's wide eyes, before bronze doors closed between them, and she was swept into a different reality entirely. The guest quarters were nothing like she'd expected, where she'd imagined a small room with a single bed, already a luxury compared to the wagon she was instead, led through marble corridors, lit by crystals that glowed with their own inner light, past tapestries that depicted wolves running beneath a silver moon, until they reached a suite of rooms that were larger than her family's entire cottage. Your chambers, miss, said the servant, who'd guided her, a middle-aged beta woman with gentle hands and careful eyes. I'm Beatrice, assigned to attend to your needs. The royal healer will arrive within the hour. Is there anything you require immediately? Freya stood in the center of an actual sitting room with plush furniture, a fireplace already crackling with warmth, windows that overlooked gardens lit by twilight, and felt like she'd stepped into someone else's life. I don't understand, she managed. There must be some mistake. Beatrice's expression softened. No mistake, miss. The Alpha King was quite clear. You're to be treated as an honored guest. She hesitated, then added quietly, I've served in this palace for 20 years. I've never seen His Majesty react to anyone the way he reacted to you. But I'm nobody. I'm just a barren wolf who was sold. You're whoever His Majesty says you are. Beatrice interrupted gently but firmly. And he says you're a guest. That makes you someone very important, whether you understand why or not. She guided Freya to the bedchamber, a room dominated by a 4-poster bed draped in silver silk, more luxury in one piece of furniture than Freya had seen in her entire life. A bathing room adjoined it, with a tub large enough to swim in, and bottles of oils that smelled like night-blooming flowers. I'll draw you a proper bath, Beatrice said. You'll want to be refreshed before the royal healer arrives. His examinations can be thorough. An hour later, Freya sat in a high-backed chair, wearing a robe of soft gray wool that probably cost more than her parents had sold her for. Her hair was still damp from the bath, and her skin smelled of jasmine oil. She felt like a child playing dress-up in stolen clothes. A knock at the door made her jump. Enter, she called, her voice steadier than she felt. The man who entered was ancient, or at least he looked it. His hair was pure white, his face mapped with wrinkles that spoke of centuries of life. But his eyes were sharp and bright, and the power that rolled off him marked him as far more than a simple healer. Miss Freya, he said, bowing slightly, a gesture of respect that shocked her. I am Aldrich, royal healer to the Blood Moon Pack, and advisor to His Majesty. The Alpha King has requested I examine you and provide him with a full assessment. An assessment of what? Freya asked. He said I was dormant. What does that mean? Aldrich's eyebrows rose. He told you that already? Interesting. His Majesty is usually more circumspect. He gestured to the chair. May I? She nodded, and he approached, his movements careful and professional. He didn't touch her immediately, but instead circled her slowly, breathing deeply, his eyes half closed. Fascinating, he murmured. Absolutely fascinating. Tell me, child, what do you know of your family's bloodline? Nothing unusual, Freya said. We're a beta family, average in every way. My sister Celeste is normal, she presented, fertile at 19. I'm the only one who's broken. Aldrich stopped in front of her, his expression thoughtful. That's the word they used? That's the word everyone used. Then everyone was wrong. He pulled a small vial from his robes, crystal filled with what looked like liquid moonlight. This is distilled essence of silver sage, blessed under the full moon. It reacts to dormant wolf bloodlines. May I? At her nod, he uncorked the vial and let a single drop fall onto her palm. The reaction was immediate. The drop didn't just sit on her skin. It absorbed instantly, and silver light blazed from her hand, racing up her arm in glowing veins, spreading across her chest, her throat, her face. Freya gasped as power surged through her, her wolf rising to the surface with a strength she'd never felt before. For 3 glorious seconds, she felt complete, whole, like something locked deep inside her had finally been allowed to breathe. Then it faded, and she slumped in the chair, gasping. Aldrich was smiling. As I suspected, you're not barren at all, Miss Freya. You're a dormant Omega. The words hit her like a physical blow. That's impossible. Omegas are rare, only 1 in 1,000 wolves. And I've never felt any Omega instincts, never had a heat cycle, never— Because you're dormant, Aldrich interrupted gently. It's an ancient phenomenon, one we haven't seen in this territory for over a century. Sometimes, when an Omega wolf's power is too great for their body to handle safely, it sleeps, waits for the right conditions to awaken. What conditions? Meeting their true mate. Aldrich's expression grew serious. Dormant Omegas only awaken when they encounter the alpha they're meant to bond with. Until that moment, their Omega nature remains hidden, undetectable even to themselves. To everyone else, they appear infertile because their reproductive system literally hasn't activated yet. Freya's mind reeled. But that would mean that the Alpha King is your true mate. Yes. Aldrich sat down across from her, his ancient eyes kind. His Majesty has been searching for you for 7 years, Miss Freya, ever since his 21st birthday when the dreams began. Dreams? Visions sent by the moon goddess herself. Fragments of a face he'd never seen, a scent he'd never smelled, a presence he'd never felt. He's brought hundreds of wolves to the capital over the years, hoping to find the one who would make his wolf recognize its mate. And tonight, finally, he found you. Freya's hands were shaking. I don't understand. Why would the moon goddess do this? Why make him wait? Why keep me dormant? Because true mate bonds between alphas and omegas are sacred, Aldrich said softly. They're meant to create the strongest bloodlines, the most powerful pack leaders. But they're also rare, perhaps 1 in 10,000 wolves ever finds their true mate. The goddess doesn't create such bonds lightly. He leaned forward, his expression grave. And she especially doesn't create them for alpha kings unless she has a purpose in mind. A chill ran down Freya's spine. What purpose? That, I cannot say. But I've served 3 alpha kings in my long life, and I've learned that the goddess works in patterns. The current alpha king Kale Bloodmoon is the most powerful alpha born to this pack in 3 centuries. His strength is unnatural, even for our bloodline. Some say he's been blessed, others say he's been cursed. What do you say? Aldrich smiled sadly. I say he's been waiting, and now that you're here, something is going to change. For better or worse, I cannot tell. Freya stood, pacing to the window to stare out at the moonlit gardens. What if I don't want this? What if I don't want to be someone's destined mate? I just wanted to stop being told I was worthless. I didn't ask for this. None of us ask for our destinies, child. We simply walk the paths the moon goddess lays before us. Aldrich rose. But I will tell you this. The Alpha King is many things, powerful, dangerous, demanding, but he's not cruel. He won't force a bond on you. True mate bonds can only be completed if both parties accept them willingly. And if I refuse, then you remain dormant. You return to what you were before unawakened, infertile in the eyes of the world. He paused at the door. But you'll also know, for the rest of your life, that you walked away from the one person in all the world who was made for you, that you chose loneliness over destiny. That's not fair. No, Aldrich agreed. It's not, but the goddess rarely is. After he left, Freya stood at the window for a long time, watching the moon rise higher in the sky. Somewhere in this massive palace, the Alpha King Kale Bloodmoon was probably thinking about her too, probably planning what came next. Her parents had sold her because they thought she was worthless, but the moon goddess had been hiding her true nature all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. I'm an Omega, a dormant Omega, the Alpha King's true mate. The words still didn't feel real. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Beatrice entered, carrying a tray with tea and small cakes that smelled of honey and lavender. I thought you might want something to eat, miss. You've had quite a shock. Beatrice, Freya said slowly. What do you know about the Alpha King? About Kale? The servant set down the tray, her expression thoughtful. His Majesty is complicated. He took the throne when he was only 20. After his father died in a territorial war, the pack expected him to be like his father, brutal, conquering, ruling through fear. But Kale is different. Different how? He rules through strength, yes, but also through justice. He reformed the laws to protect Omegas, stopped the practice of forced matings, established education programs for lower-ranking wolves. The Blood Moon Pack is the most progressive in all the territories now because of him. Beatrice poured tea with careful hands. But he's also lonely. Terribly lonely. An Alpha King without a mate is like a blade without a hilt, powerful but incomplete. And everyone knows he's been searching for something. Someone. For me, Freya whispered. For you, Beatrice confirmed gently. I know this is overwhelming. But perhaps this is the moon goddess giving you both what you need. He needs a mate to complete him, and you need someone who will see your worth. Freya laughed, the sound bitter. My parents couldn't see past my empty womb. What makes you think an Alpha King will be any different? Because he already has, miss. Beatrice's smile was knowing. He looked at you dormant, unawakened, appearing to the world as barren and immediately claimed you as precious. He didn't need you to be an Omega to see your value. That he'll discover you are one? That's just fate proving itself right. After Beatrice left, Freya sat with her tea growing cold, her mind spinning in circles. 3 days ago, she'd been worthless. A burden. Something to be sold and forgotten. Now she was supposedly a dormant Omega, the true mate of the most powerful Alpha in 5 territories, and the centerpiece of some cosmic plan the moon goddess had been orchestrating for years. It was too much, too fast, too impossible. But deep inside, where her wolf had always lived quiet and subdued, something was stirring. Waking up, responding to a call she'd never heard before. The door to her chambers opened without warning, and Freya spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Kale Bloodmoon stood in the doorway, still dressed in his formal robes from the throne room, his silver eyes glowing in the dim light. Power radiated from him like heat, making the air shimmer and her wolf whine with confused longing. I apologize for the intrusion, he said, his voice low and controlled. But I needed to see you, to ensure you were settled. Too. He paused, and for the first time, she saw uncertainty flicker across his face. To make sure you were real. Freya stood frozen as he approached slowly, like she was a wild creature he didn't want to spook. Aldrich confirmed it? She asked quietly. Yes. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could feel the pull of his presence, far enough to give her space. You're dormant. You're Omega. You're... His jaw clenched. You're mine. The possessive word should have frightened her. Instead, her wolf rolled over in pleasure, purring at the claim. I didn't ask for this, Freya said, forcing her voice to stay steady. I didn't ask to be your mate. I know. His silver eyes held hers. And I won't force the bond. True mate bonds require acceptance from both parties. I'm merely stating fact. The moon goddess made you for me, and me for you. What we do with that truth is our choice. Then what do you want from me? Kale's smile was slow and predatory and held 7 years of hunger. I want you to let me court you. I want you to stay here, in this palace, and give me the chance to prove I'm worthy of the mate the goddess chose for me. I want you to awaken fully, to become the Omega you were always meant to be. He stepped closer, and Freya's breath caught. But most of all, he said softly, his hand coming up to cup her face with devastating gentleness. I want you to choose me, not because fate demands it, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because when you look at me, you see what I see when I look at you. And what's that? Freya whispered. Home. The word broke something inside her chest. Some wall she'd built to protect herself from hope. Before she could second-guess herself, before fear could take over, Freya rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The bond snapped into place like lightning striking earth. Silver light exploded around them, so bright Freya had to close her eyes. Power surged through her body, her wolf fully awakening for the first time, unfurling like wings she'd never known she had. She felt Cale's presence in her mind, his emotions bleeding into hers. Relief, joy, possessive satisfaction. And underneath it all, a loneliness so deep it made her ache. 7 years he'd searched, 7 years he'd waited. And now, finally, he was complete. When the light faded, Freya found herself pulled tight against Cale's chest, his arms wrapped around her like he'd never let go. She could feel his heart hammering against her cheek, could smell his scent, pine and winter storms, and something uniquely him and her wolf was singing with rightness. Mine. Cale breathed against her hair, and this time the word felt like a vow. Finally, blessedly mine. Freya should have been terrified, should have pulled away, should have demanded time to think, to process, to understand what she'd just done. Instead, she held him tighter and whispered, yours, because for the first time in her life, being claimed didn't feel like being diminished. It felt like coming home. Chapter 5. The Awakening. Freya woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, wrapped in silk sheets that felt like water against her skin, and for a disorienting moment, she thought the entire previous day had been a dream. Then she felt the bond humming in her chest like a second heartbeat, connecting her to someone who was currently several rooms away but might as well have been standing beside her. She could sense his presence, his alertness, the controlled power that defined him even in the quiet morning hours. Cale, her true mate. The Alpha King. The man she'd kissed and bound herself to after knowing him for all of 3 hours. Freya pressed her palms against her eyes and groaned. What have I done? You've accepted your destiny, miss, Beatrice said cheerfully from the doorway, carrying a breakfast tray that smelled of fresh bread and berries, and caused quite the stir in the palace, I might add. The bond light was visible from the servants' quarters. Everyone's talking about it. Freya sat up, tugging the sheets higher. Everyone? His Majesty's true mate finally found after 7 years of searching. Oh yes, miss. By now, every wolf in the capital knows. Beatrice set the tray on the small table by the window and began opening curtains. You're famous, the she-wolf who awakened dormant and claimed the Alpha King's heart in a single evening. I didn't claim anything, Freya protested. He claimed me. From what the guards outside the throne room reported, it was fairly mutual. Beatrice's eyes twinkled. The kiss that sealed the bond could apparently be felt 3 corridors away. Very romantic. Very powerful. Very. She paused delicately. Unprecedented. Freya's cheeks burned. I don't know what came over me. One moment we were talking, and the next I was kissing him like he was your true mate? Beatrice suggested gently. Miss Freya, what you're feeling is natural. The bond wants to complete itself. Your Omega nature is finally awake after years of dormancy. Of course it's overwhelming. Freya moved to the table, suddenly starving. The food was incredible butter that melted on warm bread, berries that tasted like they'd been picked that morning, honey that was golden and perfect, nothing like the plain porridge she'd grown up eating. What happens now? She asked between bites. The bond it started, right? But Aldrich said it requires acceptance from both parties. Does that mean it's complete? Not quite. Beatrice poured tea, some fragrant blend that smelled of mint and something else, something that made Freya's newly awakened Omega instincts purr with contentment. The recognition bond is in place. Yes, you've acknowledged each other as true mates. But the full bond, the mating bond, requires a claiming bite exchanged during intimacy, Freya finished, her blush deepening. Yes. Until that happens, you're bound, but not fully mated. You'll feel each other's presence, sense each other's strong emotions, but you won't have complete access to each other's thoughts or feelings. And, Beatrice hesitated, Your omega nature won't fully stabilize until the bond is completed. You may experience some instability. In the meantime, what kind of instability? A knock at the door interrupted the question. Beatrice opened it to reveal Aldrich, the royal healer, looking far too awake for the early hour. Miss Freya, good morning. I hope you slept well despite the excitement. He entered with a healer's brisk efficiency. I need to conduct a follow-up examination now that your omega nature has awakened. If you're amenable? Freya nodded, setting down her tea. Beatrice mentioned instability? Ah, yes. Aldrich pulled out various instruments from his healer's bag. Crystals, vials, what looked like a tuning fork made of silver. When a dormant omega awakens, especially one as powerful as yourself, there's typically an adjustment period. Your body is essentially going through a second puberty as your omega physiology activates. You may experience mood swings, heightened senses, increased physical needs. Increased physical needs? Freya interrupted, alarmed. Aldrich's expression was professionally neutral. Omegas have stronger nesting instincts, stronger needs for physical affection from their alphas, and yes, stronger, intimate drives. It's biology, Miss Freya. Nothing to be embarrassed about. The fact that you've found your true mate actually makes this easier. Your omega will crave his presence, his scent, his touch. It's how the bond strengthens and stabilizes. He began his examination, having her hold different crystals while he made notes, testing her reflexes, checking her eyes and throat. When he pressed the silver tuning fork against her wrist, it rang with a clear, pure note that made them all pause. Extraordinary, Aldrich murmured. Your omega strength is registering at alpha level. I've never seen readings this high. What does that mean? It means the moon goddess didn't just give His Majesty a mate, she gave him an equal. Aldrich's ancient eyes were thoughtful. A true mate bond between two such powerful wolves will create offspring of unprecedented strength. Your children could reshape the future of all wolf territories. Children. The word sent a thrill of fear and wonder through Freya. 3 days ago, she'd been told she'd never have children, that her womb was cursed, that she was broken. Now she was being told she could bear the most powerful pups in generations. I need time, Freya said suddenly. This is too much, too fast. I understand that we're true mates, but I barely know him. I barely know myself now. I can't just— No one expects you to rush, Aldrich assured her. His Majesty is already aware that you'll need time to adjust. He's requested that I tell you he'll respect your pace, though. A small smile crossed his weathered face. He also wants you to know that he's arranged for you to have anything you desire. New clothes, books, access to the palace libraries, gardens, whatever would make you comfortable. He's trying to court me, Freya realized. He's trying to prove he's worthy of you, Aldrich corrected. There's a difference. After the healer left, Beatrice helped Freya dress in clothes that had apparently been delivered while she slept, beautiful garments in soft grays and blues that somehow fit perfectly. The dress she chose was simple but elegant, with silver embroidery at the sleeves that caught the light. His Majesty selected these himself, Beatrice mentioned, as she arranged Freya's hair. He has excellent taste. He picked out my clothes? The thought of the intimidating Alpha King choosing dresses for her was oddly endearing. Every single one. He spent 2 hours with the palace seamstress last night, describing your coloring, your size, your style. He was quite particular about ensuring you'd feel comfortable. The bond in Freya's chest warmed, and she knew somehow that Cale could feel her pleasure at the gesture. The connection was strange, not intrusive, but present, like having someone standing just at the edge of her awareness at all times. She was adjusting the neckline of her dress when she felt it. A pulse of concern through the bond, followed by a gentle mental pressure that felt like a question. Are you well? Freya froze. Did he just— In my mind. The bond allows basic emotional communication, Beatrice confirmed. You can send simple feelings back if you focus. Tentatively, Freya concentrated on the warm gratitude she felt for the clothes, for his thoughtfulness, and pushed it toward that connection in her chest. The response was immediate, a wave of satisfaction and something deeper, something that felt like hunger tightly leashed. He wants to see you, Beatrice said, reading Freya's expression. But he's waiting for your invitation. He won't come to you unless you ask. Freya took a deep breath. She could hide in these beautiful rooms, overwhelmed and afraid. Or she could face the reality of what she'd become, who she'd bound herself to. I want to see him, she thought toward the bond, hoping it would translate. 5 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Cale stood in the hallway, and in the morning light, he looked different than he had in the throne room. Less intimidating, somehow, though no less powerful. He'd removed his formal robes and wore simple dark pants, and a gray shirt that did nothing to hide the predatory grace of his movements. His black hair was still damp, like he'd recently bathed, and his silver eyes tracked her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Freya. Just her name. But the way he said it like a benediction, like a claim made her omega purr. Your Majesty. Cale, he interrupted gently. Please, we're true mates. You don't need to use titles when we're alone. Cale, she repeated, tasting his name. Thank you for the clothes. They're beautiful. You're beautiful. He said it simply, like stating a fact, and stepped closer. May I come in? I thought perhaps you'd like to see more of the palace. The gardens are particularly lovely this time of morning. It was phrased as a request, but Freya could feel the tension in him, the alpha wolf barely restrained, wanting to sweep her up and carry her somewhere private where he could ensure she was safe and his and real. I'd like that, she said softly. His smile transformed his face, making him look years younger, almost boyish in his pleasure. Good. There's someone I want you to meet. They walked through corridors that Freya was already getting lost. In this palace was massive, a maze of marble and silver, but Cale guided her with a hand at the small of her back, his touch burning through the fabric of her dress, the bond singing at the contact. Wolves they passed immediately dropped their eyes and bowed not to her, she realized, but to him. The Alpha King commanded respect without saying a word, but she also noticed something else. The way people's eyes widened when they saw her at his side, the whispers that followed in their wake. The true mate, the dormant Omega, the one who ended his search. They emerged into gardens that stole Freya's breath. Paths wound between flower beds in full bloom, despite the fact that it was barely spring. Trees with silver bark rose overhead, their leaves shimmering like metal. A fountain at the center sent water cascading in patterns that seemed to defy gravity. It's beautiful, Freya breathed. Magic, Cale explained. My great-grandmother was blessed by the moon goddess with the gift of growing things. She created these gardens 300 years ago, and they've been maintained with magic ever since. They bloom year-round, reflecting the emotional state of the Alpha King. Freya looked around with new eyes. The gardens were beautiful but slightly wild, as if something had been holding them back. What do they reflect about you? 7 years of searching, Cale said quietly. 7 years of waiting. They've been restrained, muted, because I was incomplete. He turned to her, his silver eyes blazing. But now that you're here, watch what happens. As Freya watched, new buds appeared on the trees impossibly fast, impossibly real. They unfurled into blossoms of silver and white, and the air filled with a scent that made her Omega instincts sing with joy. The fountain's water began to glow softly, and new flowers pushed up through the soil at their feet. They know, Cale murmured. The gardens know I've found you. Freya stared at the transformation in wonder and growing alarm. This is because of me? This is because the curse of incompleteness has been broken. He reached out and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, his touch reverent. I need you to understand something, Freya. For 7 years I've been half a person, ruling, yes, leading, yes, but always with this emptiness inside me that nothing could fill. And now you're complete. She finished. No, his smile was crooked. Now I have the chance to become complete. If you choose to fully accept the bond. If you choose me. Before Freya could respond, a voice called out from across the garden. Cale, is it true? Did you actually find her? A woman appeared on the path, tall and elegant, with the same black hair and silver eyes as Cale, though hers were warmer, more amused. She wore warrior's leathers and moved with a fighter's grace. Freya, meet my sister. Cale said with resigned affection. Sarah Bloodmoon, captain of my personal guard and perpetual thorn in my side. Sarah laughed and punched her brother's shoulder with casual familiarity that shocked Freya. She'd never seen anyone treat the Alpha King with such ease. And you love me for it. Now introduce me properly to your mate before I die of curiosity. Freya, this is Sarah. Sarah, Freya. My true mate. Sarah's eyes widened as she looked at Freya, really looked at her, and something like wonder crossed her face. A dormant Omega. I thought they were myths. So did everyone else, Freya said, finding her voice. Including me until yesterday. Well. Sarah grinned, and it was wild and delighted. This is going to be interesting. The last dormant Omega awakening was, 200 years ago? And she ended up overthrowing an entire pack structure and reforming territorial laws. What chaos will you bring? I wonder. Sarah. Cale warned, but his sister just laughed. Oh, relax. I like her already. Anyone who can make these gardens bloom again and put that look on your face is fine by me. She turned to Freya, her expression turning serious. But truly, welcome. My brother has waited a long time for you. Try not to break his heart. I'll try not to let him break mine, Freya countered before she could stop herself. Sarah's laugh was bright and genuine. Oh, I definitely like you. Come on, let me show you the training grounds. You should see what you're getting yourself into with this family. As Sarah led them deeper into the gardens, talking a mile a minute about pack politics and territorial disputes and a dozen other things. Freya barely understood. She felt Cale's presence beside her, solid, protective, patient. Through the bond, she could sense his contentment, his cautious hope, and underneath it all, that deep hunger he kept carefully controlled. He wanted her. Completely. Permanently. Forever. And the terrifying thing? Her Omega nature wanted exactly the same thing. The question was whether Freya, the girl who'd been told she was worthless, who'd been sold like property, who'd spent her whole life diminished, could accept that she deserved to be wanted this much. Could accept that she deserved to be chosen. You were always worthy, came Cale's thought through the bond, gentle and certain. The world was just too blind to see it. Freya's eyes burned with sudden tears. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to believe him. Chapter 6. The Sisters' Warning. The training grounds were exactly what Freya expected from the Blood Moon Pack, ruthlessly efficient and intimidating. Warriors sparred in organized groups, their movements precise and deadly. The clash of practice weapons rang through the air like violent music, and the scent of sweat and determination was thick enough to taste. Every single wolf stopped what they were doing when Cale entered. The silence was immediate and absolute. Dozens of warriors, alphas, betas, even a few omegas who'd clearly chosen the path of combat dropped to one knee in synchronized reverence. Your Majesty, they said as one, their voices echoing across the grounds. Cale's power rolled out in response, an acknowledgement of their respect, and a command to resume. At ease. Continue your training. They rose and returned to their exercises, but Freya felt their eyes tracking her movements, their curiosity barely concealed. She was the anomaly, the wolf who'd appeared from nowhere, and claimed their Alpha King's attention. They're staring, Freya murmured to Cale. They're curious, he corrected, his hand finding the small of her back again. The possessive touch made several nearby warriors quickly avert their eyes. You're the first wolf I've brought to the training ground since taking the throne. They're trying to understand what makes you special. Besides, the whole true mate thing. His smile was private, intimate. Besides that, Sarah led them to a shaded area where benches overlooked the main sparring ring. She dropped onto one with casual grace and gestured for Freya to sit. So, what did my dear brother tell you about our family? Nothing yet, Freya admitted. Yesterday was overwhelming. I'm sure it was. Sarah's expression turned calculating. Let me fill in the gaps then. The Blood Moon Pack has ruled these territories for 800 years. We're the oldest pure bloodline, descended directly from the first wolves blessed by the moon goddess. Our alphas are born stronger, faster, more powerful than normal wolves. It's both a gift and a curse. How is power a curse? Because it comes with madness. Sarah's voice was matter of fact, but Freya saw Cale tense beside her. Every few generations, a blood moon alpha is born with too much power, more than their mind can handle. They become unstable, dangerous. They have to be put down before they destroy the pack from within. Freya's blood ran cold. And Cale? Cale is the strongest alpha born to our bloodline in 3 centuries, Sarah said bluntly. Stronger even than our father, who was considered dangerously powerful. The pack elders have been watching him for signs of instability since he was 15, waiting to see if he'd follow the pattern. Sarah. Cale's voice held a warning. His sister ignored him. She needs to know what she's getting into, brother. She needs to understand the risk. What risk? Freya asked, her heart hammering. Sarah leaned forward, her silver eyes intense. True mate bonds are the only thing that's ever been proven to stabilize dangerously powerful alphas. The emotional connection, the completion of the soul bond, it grounds them, keeps the madness at bay. She paused. But if the bond breaks, if the mate dies or rejects them, the alpha goes completely feral. There's no coming back from it. You're trying to scare her, Cale said flatly. I'm trying to be honest with her. Sarah's gaze didn't leave Freya's face. Our father found his true mate when he was 25. She died in childbirth 3 years later. He lasted 6 months before the madness took him completely. He started a territorial war that killed hundreds before the Pack Council finally stopped him. Freya felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Stopped him how? They executed him, Cale said quietly. I was 20 years old. I had to watch as the council led by my own uncle killed my father because he'd become too dangerous to live. And then I had to take the throne and prove I wouldn't follow the same path. But you didn't have a mate, Freya whispered. How did you stay stable without one? Barely. The word was raw, honest. For 7 years, I've been holding myself together through sheer will and the hope that I'd find you before the power consumed me. Some days were harder than others. Some days I could feel the madness pressing at the edges of my mind, whispering that I should just give in, let the power take over. He turned to face her fully, and the vulnerability in his silver eyes nearly broke her heart. You saved me, Freya. Not just by existing, but by accepting the bond. Every moment with you is another moment. I don't have to fight myself. Every touch stabilizes something inside me that's been unraveling for years. You're not just my mate, you're my anchor, my salvation. That's too much pressure, Freya said, her voice shaking. I can't be responsible for your sanity. I can't. You're not responsible for it. Sarah interrupted, her tone softening. The bond does that naturally. But you need to understand what's at stake. If you accept him fully and then change your mind, if you complete the mating bond and then break it. She shook her head. There's no coming back from that. For either of you. Freya stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. The bond in her chest pulsed with Cale's concern, but she pushed it aside. She walked to the edge of the shaded area and stared out at the warriors training, their movements practiced and precise. 3 days ago, she'd been worthless, unwanted, sold like livestock. Now she was supposedly the key to an Alpha King's sanity, the anchor for a power that could destroy entire territories, and the Omega who would bear children strong enough to reshape the wolf world. It's too much. It's all too much. Freya. Cale's voice came from directly behind her, but he didn't touch her. I'm sorry. Sarah's right, you needed to know the truth. But I should have been the one to tell you. Gently, not dropped on you like this. Were you ever going to tell me? She turned to face him. Or were you just going to court me and hope I never found out what the stakes really were? I was going to tell you everything, he said steadily. Tonight, actually. I'd planned a private dinner where we could talk honestly about what the bond means, what the risks are, what you deserve to know before making any permanent decisions. But Sarah jumped the gun. I don't regret it. Sarah called from the benches. She deserves to know now, not after she's already fallen for you. Cale's jaw clenched, but he nodded slowly. She's right. You deserve all the information before you decide whether to complete the bond. The good and the bad. The beautiful and the terrifying. Freya studied his face, the sharp cheekbones, the strong jaw, the eyes that glowed with inhuman power. He was beautiful and terrifying all at once. A predator who could kill her with barely a thought, but who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. "Tell me the rest," she said quietly. "Everything. No more surprises." Cale glanced at Sarah, who nodded and rose. "I'll give you privacy. But Freya?" She paused at the path leading back to the palace. "My brother is a good man. The best man I know. He'll never hurt you intentionally. But the bond between you is powerful enough to reshape reality. Just be careful. With his heart and your own." After she left, Cale gestured to the benches, and they sat side by side, not quite touching. The training sounds continued around them, but Freya felt like they existed in a bubble of privacy. "The blood moon madness," Cale began, his voice low and controlled, "is a risk every alpha in my family faces. The stronger you are, the greater the risk. I manifested my full power at 16 5 years earlier than normal. The pack elders wanted to execute me immediately. They said I was too dangerous, that I'd never make it to adulthood without going feral. But you did, because I had dreams." He smiled slightly. "Starting on my 21st birthday, the moon goddess sent me visions. Fragments of you, your laugh, your scent, the color of your eyes. I didn't understand what they meant at first, but the pack's historians recognized it. True mate dreams. The goddess telling me that my anchor existed, that I just had to find her. So you started searching. Obsessively." Cale's hand flexed like he wanted to reach for her but was restraining himself. "I brought every unmated wolf within traveling distance to the capital. Hundreds of them, hoping one would make my wolf recognize our mate. The pack started calling me mad, ironically, since the search was the only thing keeping me sane." 7 years, Freya murmured. "That's a long time to wait." Every day felt like an eternity. His silver eyes found hers. "But now that I've found you, I understand why it took so long. You weren't just dormant. You weren't ready. You needed to experience what you did. Needed to become who you are now, before we could meet. The goddess's timing is cruel but precise." Freya thought about her life in Ashwood, the years of being told she was worthless, the humiliation, the rejection, her parents finally selling her. "You think I needed to go through all that pain? I think you needed to discover your own strength before meeting me," Cale said carefully. "An Omega who's been coddled, who's never faced hardship, would be destroyed by the weight of being an Alpha King's mate. But you?" His hand finally reached out, fingers brushing her cheek. "You've been forged in fire. You know your worth isn't defined by what others think of you. That strength will serve you well in the role the goddess has prepared for you." "And what role is that?" "My queen." The words were simple, absolute. "Not just my mate, but my equal. The Omega whose power matches my Alpha. The one who will stand beside me and help me rule these territories with wisdom and justice. The mother of children who will be stronger than any wolves born in generations." His thumb traced her jawline, and power sparked where he touched her, that same silver light from last night. "But most importantly," Cale continued, his voice dropping to something intimate and raw, "you'll be the one who sees me. Not the Alpha King, not the dangerous power, not the burden of legacy. Just me. Cale. The man who's been incomplete for 7 years and is finally whole." Freya's breath caught. Through the bond, she could feel the truth of his words. The desperate loneliness he'd carried. The constant battle against his own power. The fear that he'd never find her in time. "What if I'm not strong enough?" she whispered. "What if I can't handle being what you need?" "You already are." His forehead rested against hers, and the intimacy of the gesture made her Omega purr. "You accepted the bond knowing almost nothing about me. You kissed me despite having every reason to be afraid. You're sitting here now, listening to the terrifying truth about what our bond means, and you haven't run. That's strength, Freya. That's courage. Or stupidity." His laugh was surprised and genuine. "Maybe both, but I'll take it." They sat in silence for a moment, the bond humming between them, connecting them in ways that went beyond words. Freya could feel his presence in her mind, not intrusive, but there, steady, strong, patient. He'd wait as long as she needed. Would give her time to adjust, to accept, to understand what being his mate truly meant. But they both knew the truth. The bond was already pulling them together. Her Omega nature wanted to complete what they'd started, and every moment they delayed was another moment the incomplete bond would torment them both with unfulfilled need. "I want to see more of the palace," Freya said suddenly. "I want to understand this world I'm supposed to be part of. The good parts and the dangerous parts. All of it." Cale pulled back, studying her face. "Are you sure? Some of what I need to show you isn't pleasant." "I'm sure." She stood, offering him her hand. "If I'm going to make a fully informed decision about completing this bond, I need to see everything. No more protection. No more gentle revelations. Show me the truth of what it means to be your mate." His smile was fierce and proud as he took her hand, the contact sending warmth racing up her arm. "As you wish, my Omega. But be warned, once you see the full scope of my world, there's no unseeing it. You'll understand exactly what you're accepting." "Good," Freya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Because I'm done making decisions based on incomplete information. I'm done being told what I am by other people. It's time I decided for myself." "Then let me show you," Cale said, leading her back toward the palace. "Exactly what it means to be queen of the Blood Moon Pack." And as they walked, Freya felt something shift inside her. That dormant part of herself that had been sleeping for 22 years, finally stretching and yawning and preparing to fully wake. She'd been afraid of her own power for so long, been told it was a curse. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to discover what she could become when she stopped being afraid. Chapter 7. The Truth of Power. Cale led her deep into the palace, past the beautiful public areas and into sections Freya suspected few wolves ever saw. The corridors here were stark, utilitarian, lined with doors bearing heavy locks and silver reinforcements that hummed with protective magic. "This is the secure wing," Cale explained as they descended a spiral staircase carved from black stone, "where we keep records too dangerous for general access, artifacts too powerful to display, and," he paused at a massive iron door, "the truth about what I really am." He pressed his palm against the door, and silver light flared from the contact. Complex locks disengaged with mechanical precision, and the door swung open to reveal a room that made Freya's breath catch. It was a library, but not like any she'd seen before. Instead of books, the walls were lined with crystal shards suspended in silver frames, each one glowing with inner light, each one containing what looked like moving images. "Memory crystals," Cale said quietly. "A gift from the moon goddess to the first blood moon Alpha 800 years ago. Every Alpha King since has recorded significant moments of their reign, victories, defeats, moments of glory." He gestured to a darker section of crystals. "And moments of madness." Freya moved closer to examine one of the dark crystals. Inside, she could see shadows writhing, violence barely contained. "What happened?" "My great-great-grandfather." Cale stood beside her, his expression grim. "He was the last Blood Moon Alpha to go completely feral before my father. Killed 37 pack members in a single night before they managed to stop him. This crystal contains his final moments, kept as a warning to future generations about what happens when power consumes reason." He moved to another crystal, this one showing a woman with silver eyes and dark hair standing before what looked like an army. "My great-grandmother. She was the dormant Omega who awakened and bonded with my great-grandfather. She ruled for 60 years after his death and reformed territorial law to protect Omegas from forced matings. She's considered the greatest leader our pack ever had." "She was a dormant Omega too?" "The last one, until you." Cale's fingers traced the crystal's frame with something like reverence. "She proved that Omegas could be more than breeders and caretakers. That Omega power, properly awakened, could rival Alpha strength. The pack has been searching for another like her ever since." He led Freya deeper into the room, to a section where newer crystals glowed with brighter light. "These are mine, my reign. 7 years of decisions, battles, reforms, and..." He stopped at a crystal that pulsed with erratic, almost violent light. "My darkest moments. You don't have to show me," Freya said softly, seeing the tension in his shoulders. "Yes, I do." He pulled the crystal from its frame and held it between them. "If you're going to be my mate, You need to see what you're anchoring. What exists inside me that requires your presence to control. He pressed the crystal, and light exploded around them. Suddenly, Freya was standing in a memory she could see through Cale's eyes, feel his emotions, experience his reality. She was in this very room, but it was 3 years ago based on the date glowing in the corner of her vision. And Cale was coming apart. She felt his power surging out of control. Felt the madness pressing at the edges of his mind like something alive and hungry. His wolf was trying to take over completely, wanting to tear free and destroy everything in its path. The room around them was cracking, literally cracking from the force of his uncontrolled power. Can't hold it, his thoughts whispered in her mind. Too much, too strong. Going to break, going to become him, going to become father. Freya watched as he fought himself with desperate determination. Watched him use pure willpower to force his wolf back down, to cage the power that wanted to consume him. It took hours, hours of struggle, of pain, of barely maintaining control. When it finally ended, Cale collapsed on the floor of the crystal room, bleeding from his nose and ears, his body shaking with exhaustion. One more day, he'd thought. One more day of searching. She has to be out there. The goddess wouldn't show me her face if she wasn't real. Just one more day. The memory faded, and Freya found herself back in the present, tears streaming down her face. That was 3 years ago, Cale said quietly, replacing the crystal. The worst episode I've had. It lasted 8 hours. Afterward, the Pack Council met in secret to discuss executing me. Sarah talked them out of it barely. How often does that happen? Freya's voice was hoarse. It was happening once every few months at first, then monthly. By the time I found you, I was having smaller episodes weekly. He turned to face her, and his eyes were haunted. I was running out of time, Freya. Another year, maybe less, and I wouldn't have been able to stop it. The madness would have won, and the council would have been right to end me. Freya's hand pressed against her chest, feeling the bond humming there. But now I feel stable for the first time in years. The bond is already helping. Your presence soothes something in me that's been screaming since my father died. Once we complete the mating bond, once we're fully connected. His expression softened. I'll finally be able to breathe without fighting myself. He pulled another crystal from a different section, this one glowing warm and golden. But it's not all darkness. Let me show you what I've built. What we could build together. This memory was different. Freya saw through Cale's eyes as he stood before the Pack Council, proposing reforms that would protect Omega rights, establish education programs for lower-ranking wolves, and create pathways for advancement based on merit rather than birth. She felt his determination as he fought against centuries of tradition, felt his satisfaction as, one by one, the reforms were implemented, saw the difference they made. Omegas who could read, betas who became advisors, a pack structure based on justice rather than brute strength. You did all this? Freya whispered as the memory faded. We did this. Cale gestured around the room. Every Blood Moon Alpha before me. Each one trying to make the pack better, stronger, more just. I've just continued the work. He took her hand, his touch gentle. But there's so much more to do. The other territories still practice forced matings. They still treat Omegas as property. They still believe might makes right. His silver eyes blazed with passion. With you as my queen, we could change that. Your strength, your experience of being dismissed and undervalued, it would give you insights I could never have. Together, we could reshape the entire wolf world into something better. Freya's mind spun with the implications. You're not just asking me to be your mate. You're asking me to help you change society. I'm asking you to be my partner in every way that matters. Cale's other hand came up to cup her face. I'm asking you to stand beside me and prove that Omegas can be queens, that strength comes in many forms, that the moon goddess's gifts shouldn't be wasted on outdated traditions. Through the bond, Freya felt the truth of his words, the vision he had for the future, the changes he wanted to make, the world he wanted to build, and underneath it all, his desperate hope that she'd choose to build it with him. What if I fail? The question came out small, vulnerable. What if I'm not the queen you need? What if I can't handle the pressure, the politics, the expectations? Then we'll fail together. His answer was immediate. Freya, I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for a partner. Someone who'll challenge me when I'm wrong, support me when I'm right, and stand beside me when everything goes to hell. You've already proven you're that person. How? You're still here. His smile was crooked, almost shy. After everything Sarah told you, after seeing my darkest moments in those crystals, after understanding exactly what the stakes are, you're still here. You haven't run. That tells me everything I need to know about your strength. Before Freya could respond, a pulse of alarm shot through the bond, not from Cale, but from somewhere else in the palace. His head snapped up, his entire body going rigid with sudden tension. What is it? Freya asked. Intruders at the eastern border. His voice had changed, become the Alpha King rather than the man. A large group, moving fast toward the capital. They're... His eyes widened. They're from the Ashwood pack. Freya's blood ran cold. My family. Not just your family. Cale was already moving toward the door, power rolling off him in waves. Your father is leading a delegation of 30 wolves, and he's demanding an audience with me immediately. Why would he? Freya stopped, realization hitting her like a physical blow. He knows. Somehow he found out about the bond. About what I am. Of course he does. Cale's expression had gone cold, dangerous. News of an Alpha King finding his true mate after 7 years of searching? Of a dormant Omega awakening? It's probably spread across every pack territory by now. And your father, who sold you thinking you were barren and worthless, just realized he gave away the most valuable Omega in generations for pocket change. Anger surged through Freya, hot and bitter and cleansing. He wants me back. He wants to renegotiate. Cale's hand found hers, and his touch was possessive, protective. Wants to claim some kind of rights to you, leverage your new status for political advantage. It's what weak alphas do when they realize they've underestimated value. They climbed the stairs quickly, Sarah meeting them at the top with a grim expression. I've deployed guards at the throne room. Magnus Ashwood is demanding to see his daughter and the Alpha King. He's brought half his pack as a show of strength. A show of stupidity, Cale corrected coldly. He sold his daughter to a traitor, and now he wants to waltz into my capital and make demands? Sarah, assemble the full guard, full ceremonial armor. I want him to understand exactly who he's dealing with. And Freya? Sarah asked. Cale looked at her, his expression softening slightly. That's her choice. She can stay in her chambers, away from this ugliness. Or, his smile was sharp, she can stand beside me on the throne dais and show her father exactly what he threw away. Freya thought about Magnus, his cold eyes when he'd told her she was worthless, his casual cruelty when he'd sold her to Corvus. She thought about Arya's refusal to meet her eyes, about Celeste's pitying smiles. They'd broken her heart, destroyed her confidence, made her believe she deserved to be discarded. But standing here in the Blood Moon Palace, bonded to the most powerful alpha in 5 territories, her Omega nature finally awakened, and her true value finally recognized. She wasn't that broken girl anymore. I'll stand with you, Freya said, her voice steady and sure. I want him to see what I've become. I want him to understand exactly what he traded away for coin. Cale's smile was fierce and proud. Then let's show them. Let's show all of them what happens when you underestimate a dormant Omega. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers for just a moment, a gesture of intimacy and support, and absolute faith. You are not worthless, he murmured against her skin. You are not broken. You are mine, and I am yours, and anyone who tries to claim otherwise will learn exactly why they call me the most dangerous alpha in 5 territories. Through the bond, Freya felt his rage on her behalf, cold and controlled and absolutely lethal. He would destroy anyone who tried to hurt her. Would tear apart anyone who made her feel less than she was. For the first time in her life, someone was ready to fight for her, and it felt like coming home. Let's go, Freya said, straightening her shoulders. Let's show my father what a mistake he made. Together, they walked toward the throne room, toward the confrontation that would change everything, toward the moment when Freya would finally prove to herself and everyone else that her worth had never been defined by what others thought of her. It had always been there, waiting to be recognized. Just like she'd been waiting to be found. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The throne room had been transformed since Freya's first arrival. Where before it had seemed grand but somehow empty, now it radiated power and barely contained menace. Cowles' elite guards lined the walls in ceremonial armor that gleamed like silver moonlight. 50 of the strongest warriors in the Blood Moon pack, each one capable of destroying a dozen ordinary wolves. It was a deliberate show of force. A reminder of exactly who ruled here. Sarah stood at the base of the dais, her hand resting casually on her sword hilt, her silver eyes cold and assessing. Other high-ranking pack members filled the space, advisors, generals, magistrates, all watching with predatory interest as the Ashwood delegation was escorted in. And at the center of it all, on the throne of silver and obsidian, sat Cale. He looked every inch the Alpha King now. His formal robes were black with silver embroidery that caught the light, and a circlet of twisted silver rested on his dark hair, the crown of the Blood Moon Alphas, ancient and terrible. His silver eyes glowed with power barely leashed, and the air around him shimmered with heat. He was magnificent, terrifying, a predator on a throne built from centuries of dominance. And Freya stood beside him, not on a lesser seat, not behind him, beside him, on the dais, in a place of equal honor. She wore a dress Beatrice had helped her into just minutes ago, deep midnight blue with silver thread, woven in patterns that resembled wolf tracks. It was clearly expensive, clearly intentional, and the message was unmistakable. She belonged here. She was honored here. She was valued. Through the bond, she felt Kyle's satisfaction at having her beside him, his possessive pleasure at showing the world she was his. The bronze doors opened, and the Ashwood delegation entered. Freya's breath caught despite herself. Magnus led them, her father, looking smaller somehow in this grand space, his authority diminished by the sheer weight of Blood Moon power surrounding him. Behind him came Arya, her mother, eyes wide and calculating, and behind her, looking nervous and out of place, was Celeste, her perfect, fertile, favored sister. Magnus's eyes found Freya immediately, and she watched shock ripple across his face. He'd expected to find her in servant's clothes, perhaps working in the kitchens. Instead, she stood beside the Alpha King, dressed like royalty, her Omega scent finally awakened, and filling the room with power that made several of the Ashwood wolves flinch. "Your Majesty." Magnus bowed, not as deeply as he should have, Freya noticed. Pride still stiffened his spine. "Thank you for granting us audience on such short notice. I granted nothing." Cale's voice was ice and steel. "You demanded entry to my capital, disrupted border security, and insisted on seeing me immediately. I'm tolerating your presence long enough to understand what possessed you to think such behavior was acceptable." Magnus's jaw tightened. "I come regarding my daughter. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Has there?" Cale leaned forward slightly, and several Ashwood wolves took involuntary steps back. "Explain." "When the traitor Corvus came to our pack, he misrepresented the terms of the arrangement. We thought," Magnus's eyes darted to Freya, then away. "We thought Freya was being offered legitimate employment, a chance at a better life. We never intended for her to be sold as property." The lie was so blatant, so audacious, that Freya almost laughed. "Interesting." Cale's tone suggested he found it anything but. "Because Corvus's records, which I've reviewed personally, indicate you negotiated a sale price, not employment terms. A sale. You traded your daughter for coin and signed documents acknowledging the transaction. We were told she'd be cared for. You were told she'd be worked in my kitchens or laundries, because you informed Corvus she was barren and worthless." Each word was delivered with surgical precision. "You sold your own daughter because you deemed her broken, because she didn't meet your standards of value." Magnus's face flushed red. "We didn't understand." "You understood perfectly." Cale rose from his throne, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "You understood your daughter couldn't produce grandchildren for you, couldn't create advantageous alliances, couldn't serve your ambitions, so you disposed of her like refuse and took coin for your trouble." He descended the dais steps slowly, each footfall echoing like a death knell. The ashwood wolves pressed together, suddenly aware they were prey in a predator's den. What you didn't understand, Cale continued, his voice dropping to something deadly quiet, was that your daughter was never barren. She was dormant. A gift from the moon goddess herself, hidden until the moment she met her true mate. Magnus's eyes widened. True mate? You mean? I mean your worthless, broken daughter is my omega. Cale's smile was all teeth. The one I've been searching for 7 years. The one who will be queen of the Blood Moon Pack, and bear children more powerful than any born in 3 centuries. The one you sold for barely enough coin to pay for your other daughter's wedding dress. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Freya watched her father's face cycle through emotions, shock, disbelief, calculation, and finally, desperate greed. She could practically see him reassessing, recalculating, trying to figure out how to profit from this new information. If she's your true mate, Magnus said carefully, then surely there's been a mistake in how the transaction was handled. She's still my daughter, blood of my blood. Perhaps we can come to a new arrangement that's more appropriate for her new status. You want to renegotiate? Cale's voice was flat, dangerous. You want to pretend you didn't throw her away, pretend you deserve some kind of compensation or rights to her now that you understand her value. She's family. Arya spoke up for the first time, her voice trembling. We made mistakes, yes, but we love her. Surely she belongs with her family until a proper mating ceremony can be arranged. She belongs with me. The words cracked through the air like a whip. The bond is already in place. She is mine, and I am hers. There is no negotiation. There are no terms. There is only the reality that you threw away the most precious gift the moon goddess could give, and I claimed what you discarded. Freya felt the moment had come. She stepped forward, and every eye in the room snapped to her. Father, she said quietly, and Magnus flinched at the coldness in her tone. You want to talk about family? About love? Let me tell you what I remember about your love. She descended the dais steps, and Cale moved with her, not controlling her, but supporting her, a solid presence at her back. I remember you looking at me with disappointment every day of my life after I turned 19. I remember Mother refusing to meet my eyes because my existence embarrassed her. I remember Celeste pitying me, treating me like I was already dead. She stopped directly in front of Magnus, and for the first time in her life, he had to look up at her. She stood on the elevated platform of Blood Moon power while he stood as a supplicant. You told me I was worthless, Freya continued, her voice steady and clear. You told me I was a burden. You took coin from a trader and sent me away without a second thought. And now that you know I have value, you come here claiming love, claiming family? Freya, you don't understand the pressure we were under, Arya started. I understand perfectly. Freya's eyes found her mother's. You valued social standing over your daughter. You valued Celeste's prospects over my dignity. You valued coin over my worth as a person. Those were choices you made, deliberate choices. She turned to Celeste, who was staring at her with something like horror. You've always been the favorite. The pretty one. The fertile one. The one who deserved everything, while I deserved nothing. How does it feel, sister, knowing that the moon goddess chose me for something you could never have? Celeste's face crumpled, but Freya felt no satisfaction in it. Only a distant sadness for the relationship they'd never had. You want a new arrangement? Freya looked back at Magnus. Here's my arrangement. You will leave this capital immediately. You will return to Ashwood and forget you have a daughter named Freya. Because the girl you sold doesn't exist anymore. She felt Cale's approval through the bond, felt his pride in her strength. The woman standing here, Freya continued, is someone new. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who has a mate who sees her value without needing to be told. Someone who will be queen of the most powerful pack in 5 territories. Her voice dropped, became steel wrapped in silk. And that woman wants nothing to do with the family who threw her away. Magnus's face had gone purple with rage and humiliation. You ungrateful. Choose your next words very carefully, Cale interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. You're speaking to my Omega. Insult her, and I'll consider it a personal attack. And you really don't want to attack me in my own throne room, surrounded by my guards. in front of witnesses. The threat was clear and absolute. Magnus swallowed hard, visibly fighting for control. When he spoke again, his voice was strained. "We came here in good faith. You came here hoping to profit from your daughter's new status," Sarah interrupted from her position near the dais. "Let's not pretend otherwise. You saw an opportunity for advantage and seized it. Unfortunately for you, the Alpha King is not in the habit of rewarding wolves who abuse their children. We could file a formal complaint with the Territorial Council." Magnus tried desperately. "Challenge the legitimacy of the bond on grounds of..." "On grounds of what?" Cale's smile was vicious. "That you sold her first? That you relinquished all rights to her the moment you took Corvus's coin? Please, do file a complaint. I'd love to see you explain to the council why you think you deserve compensation for discarding your own daughter." He moved to stand beside Freya, his hand finding hers. The contact sent visible sparks of silver light up their arms, the bond making itself known, undeniable proof of their connection. "The only reason you're still standing in my throne room," Cale said quietly, "is because Freya wanted to see you one last time, wanted to show you what you lost, wanted you to understand the magnitude of your mistake, but that courtesy is now exhausted." He raised his hand, and immediately a dozen guards moved forward. "Escort the Ashwood delegation to the border," Cale commanded. "Ensure they leave Blood Moon territory by nightfall, and make it clear that Magnus Ashwood, Arya Ashwood, and Celeste Ashwood are henceforth banned from this capital. They are not welcome at the mating ceremony. They are not welcome at any future celebrations. They are not welcome here ever again." "You can't," Magnus started. "I can, and I have." Cale's eyes blazed with silver fire. "I am the Alpha King. My word is law in these territories, and I have declared that the wolves who abused my mate are no longer welcome in my presence. Consider yourselves fortunate I'm allowing you to leave alive." The guards closed in, and the Ashwood wolves had no choice but to comply. As they were herded toward the door, Arya turned back one last time. "Freya, please." "Goodbye, Mother." Freya's voice was calm, final. "I hope Celeste's wedding is everything you dreamed it would be." The bronze doors closed, and they were gone. The throne room remained silent for a long moment, every wolf processing what they'd just witnessed. Then, slowly, the Blood Moon pack members began to move again, whispers spreading like wildfire. The Alpha King's mate had just publicly severed ties with her birth family, had chosen her bond over her blood, had proven she had the strength to stand beside him. Freya felt her legs start to shake as the adrenaline faded. Cale was there immediately, pulling her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her with fierce protectiveness. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "Absolutely magnificent." I feel sick," Freya admitted, her face pressed to his shoulder. "That's normal. You just cut off your family. It hurts, even when it's necessary." His hand stroked her back in soothing circles. "But you did the right thing. They would have used you, manipulated you, tried to leverage your position for their own gain. This way, you're free of them." "I know." Her voice was muffled. "I know it was right. It just hurts anyway." "Of course it does." Cale pulled back enough to cup her face, his silver eyes warm with understanding. "Loving them and recognizing they're toxic aren't mutually exclusive. You're allowed to grieve the family you deserved while acknowledging the family you had wasn't worthy of you." Through the bond, Freya felt his own grief, his father's madness, his mother's death, the burden of a legacy that had almost destroyed him. He understood loss, understood the ache of family that failed you. They understood each other. "Take me somewhere private," Freya whispered. "Please, I can't be strong in front of all these people anymore." "Of course." Cale swept her up into his arms, the gesture sudden and possessive and exactly what her shaken Omega nature needed. "Clear the throne room," he commanded over his shoulder. "The audience is concluded." He carried her through the palace, past curious eyes and whispered speculation, until they reached her chambers. Only when the door closed behind them did he set her down gently on the plush couch. "Do you want me to stay or go?" he asked quietly. Freya grabbed his hand before he could step away. "Stay. Please stay." So he sat beside her, and she curled against him. and they sat in silence while she processed everything that had just happened. She'd confronted her family, rejected them, chosen her new life over her old one, and somehow, with Cale's steady presence beside her and the bond humming contentment in her chest, it felt like the rightest thing she'd ever done. "Thank you," she whispered after a long while. "For what?" "For seeing my worth when no one else could. For giving me a place where I belong. For being the home I never had." Cale's arms tightened around her, and through the bond, she felt the depth of his emotion gratitude that matched her own possessive satisfaction, and underneath it all, love that was just beginning to bloom. "You gave me the same things," he said softly. "I was lost. And you found me. I was breaking. And you made me whole. We saved each other, Freya. That's what true mates do." And in that moment, Freya knew with absolute certainty that completing the bond wasn't a question anymore. It was inevitable. It was right. It was home. Chapter 9. The choice. 3 days passed in a blur of adjustment and discovery. Freya learned the layout of the palace, the public halls where pack business was conducted, the private gardens where she could think in peace, the library that held thousands of books she'd only dreamed of reading. She met advisors and generals, learned names and ranks, began to understand the intricate web of politics that governed the Blood Moon Pack. And through it all, Cale was there, patient, supportive, giving her space when she needed it, and closeness when she craved it. The bond between them grew stronger each day. She could feel his presence constantly now, a warm, steady anchor in her mind. Could sense his emotions, his location, his state of being, and he could sense hers. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like finally being understood, but the incomplete bond was also becoming a problem. Freya's omega nature, fully awakened now but not yet claimed, was growing restless. She felt it in the way her skin seemed too tight, in the constant ache low in her belly, in the dreams that left her gasping and frustrated when she woke. Her body knew what it wanted, what it needed, and was making its demands very clear. Complete the bond, accept the claim, become fully mated. On the third night, Freya stood in her chambers, staring out at the moonlit gardens, wearing only a thin nightgown, her body thrumming with unfulfilled need. Through the bond, she could feel Cale in his own chambers several corridors away, and she knew he was experiencing the same torment. The incomplete bond was torture for both of them. "Come to me," she thought toward the bond, not even sure if he'd understand the complex message. But within minutes, there was a soft knock at her door. Freya opened it to find Cale standing in the hallway, dressed in simple sleep pants and a loose shirt, his hair slightly disheveled. His silver eyes were molten, burning with barely controlled hunger. "You called," he said, his voice rough. Is this what I think it is?" "I don't know what it is," Freya admitted, stepping back to let him enter. "I just know I can't sleep. Can't think. Can't focus on anything except—" She gestured helplessly between them, the bond demanding completion. Cale closed the door but stayed near it, giving her space despite the tension radiating from his body. "It's getting harder to resist, isn't it? Every day." Freya wrapped her arms around herself. "Is it always like this? For true mates?" "Yes." He leaned against the door, and she could see the effort it took him not to cross the room and pull her against him. The recognition bond is just the beginning. Once it's in place, both parties start experiencing the pull toward completion. It gets stronger over time until it becomes almost unbearable. "How long can we resist it?" "As long as you need." His jaw clenched. "Freya, I won't pressure you. I know this is fast, that you're still adjusting to everything. If you need more time, what if I don't?" The words came out in a rush. "What if I'm tired of waiting? Tired of being careful? Tired of denying what we both want?" Cale's eyes flared with silver light. "Then tell me what you want, clearly. Because I need to hear you say it." Freya took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I want to complete the bond. Tonight, I want you to claim me, and I want to claim you. I want to stop being incomplete. Are you sure?" He still hadn't moved from the door, his control absolute despite the hunger she could feel through the bond. "Once we do this, there's no going back. We'll be mated for life, bound in every way that matters." "I'm sure," She moved toward him slowly. I've spent my whole life being told I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy, wasn't valuable. But you see me, Cale. You see all of me, the broken parts and the strong parts, and you want me anyway. How could I not choose that? How could I not choose you? Something in his expression cracked, and suddenly he was across the room, his hands cupping her face with devastating gentleness. I need you to understand something, he said intensely. Once we complete this bond, you'll feel everything I feel. You'll know the depth of my power, the darkness I've fought, the love I have for you that's already consuming me. There will be no secrets between us, no hiding, no pretending. You'll see the monster and the man, and you'll be bound to both. I'm not afraid of your darkness, Freya said, her hands coming up to cover his. I've lived in darkness my whole life. At least yours comes with the promise of light. Freya. She rose on her toes and kissed him, swallowing whatever protest he'd been about to make. The bond flared between them immediately, silver light exploding in the space where their bodies met. Power surged through her, her omega nature rising to meet his alpha, recognizing, claiming, demanding. Cale groaned against her mouth and pulled her tighter, and Freya felt the last of his careful control shatter. His hands were in her hair, on her waist, everywhere at once, and she arched into his touch with a desperation that should have embarrassed her. But there was no room for embarrassment, no space for doubt. There was only this, the bond completing itself, the pieces finally falling into place, the recognition that they were meant to fit together exactly like this. Bedroom. Cale managed against her lips. I'm not claiming you in a sitting room like some desperate adolescent. He swept her up without waiting for a response, carrying her through the doorway to her bedchamber. Moonlight streamed through the windows, painting everything in silver and shadow, and Freya thought distantly that it was fitting moonlight for a blessing that came from the moon goddess herself. Cale set her down on the edge of the massive bed with careful reverence, his silver eyes never leaving her face. Last chance, he said, his voice strained. Last chance to change your mind, to ask for more time, to... Cale. She reached up and pulled him down to her. Stop being noble and claim me already. His laugh was rough and surprised and delighted. As my omega commands. What happened next was a blur of sensation and emotion that Freya would never be able to fully articulate. Cale's hands on her skin, gentle and possessive, her nightgown disappearing, though she couldn't remember him removing it. The weight of his body covering hers, the rightness of it making her omega purr with satisfaction, and then the claiming itself, his teeth sinking into the junction of her neck and shoulder, marking her as his in the most primal way possible. The bond snapped into full completion with a force that stole her breath, and suddenly she wasn't just feeling Cale's emotions. She was experiencing them, his 7 years of desperate searching, his terror that he'd go mad before finding her, his overwhelming relief when he'd finally seen her face in his throne room, his awe at her strength, his pride in her courage, his love that was already deeper than oceans, and underneath it all, his absolute conviction that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Freya bit down on his shoulder in return, her own claiming mark, sealing the bond from both sides. She felt the moment it completed fully, felt the connection lock into place with a finality that was both terrifying and exhilarating. They were one now. Truly, completely one. Silver light exploded around them so bright that Freya had to close her eyes. She felt power surge through her body, not just Cale's power, but her own omega strength fully activating for the first time. It rose in her like a tide, matching his alpha power, balancing it, completing it. When the light finally faded, they lay tangled together in the sheets, both breathing hard, both glowing with the after effects of the completed bond. That was... Freya couldn't find words. Everything, Cale finished, pulling her against his chest. That was everything. Through the bond, she could feel his satisfaction, his possessive pleasure, his deep contentment, but she could also feel something else, a lightness in him that hadn't been there before, as if a weight he'd been carrying for years had finally lifted. The madness, she said softly. It's really gone, isn't it? Not gone, he corrected, his hand stroking her hair, but contained, controlled. Your presence stabilizes something in me that's been threatening to break for 7 years. I can feel it. The power that used to scream for release is now. Calm. Content. Complete. He pulled back enough to look at her, and his silver eyes were bright with unshed tears. You saved me, Freya. Truly saved me. I would have become like my father, mad, dangerous, eventually executed for the good of the pack. But you, his voice broke slightly, you gave me a reason to stay sane, a reason to keep fighting, a reason to be better than the darkness inside me. We saved each other, Freya said, repeating his words from days ago. She could feel it now through the bond, could sense how broken they'd both been, how perfectly they fit together, how they'd each given the other exactly what they needed. She'd given him stability, purpose, love. He'd given her value, protection. Home. What happens now? She asked after a long moment of comfortable silence. Now? Cale's smile was slow and satisfied. Now we announce our mating to the pack. There will be a formal ceremony, mostly symbolic, since the bond is already complete, but tradition matters to the older wolves. You'll be officially crowned as my queen. We'll start the work of reforming the territories together. And his hand moved to rest on her stomach, his touch reverent. We'll wait to see if the goddess blesses us with children. Freya's hand covered his, and through the bond, she felt his longing for pups, for a family, for the future they could build together. Do you think it will happen quickly? With an omega as powerful as you, and an alpha as strong as me? He grinned. I'd be shocked if you're not pregnant within a few months. Our children are going to be terrifying. Terrifyingly powerful or terrifyingly spoiled. Both. He kissed her forehead. Definitely both. They lay together in comfortable silence, the bond humming contentedly between them, until Freya felt exhaustion beginning to pull at her. The completion of the bond had taken enormous energy, and her body was demanding rest. Sleep, Cale murmured, sensing her fatigue through their connection. I'll be here when you wake. Promise? Always. His arms tightened around her. I spent 7 years searching for you. Now that I have you, I'm never letting go. Freya drifted off to sleep, feeling safer, more complete, more valued than she'd ever felt in her life. 4 days ago, she'd been worthless. Barren. Sold like livestock. Now she was the queen of the Blood Moon Pack, the true mate of the most powerful alpha in 5 territories, and the beginning of a new dynasty that would reshape the wolf world. The moon goddess worked in mysterious ways, Freya thought drowsily, but sometimes, those mysterious ways led exactly where you needed to go. Next morning, Freya woke to sunlight streaming through windows and the sensation of being completely perfectly warm. It took her a moment to remember why Cale was wrapped around her like a possessive blanket, his body radiating heat, his arms holding her secure. Through the bond, she could feel he was already awake, had been for a while, just watching her sleep. That's not creepy at all, she murmured without opening her eyes. His laugh rumbled through his chest. When you're bonded to someone, watching them sleep is romantic, not creepy. New rules. Your rules are suspicious. My rules are law. I'm the Alpha King. But his tone was teasing, lighter than she'd ever heard it. Freya opened her eyes to find him propped on one elbow, looking down at her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. The claiming mark on his shoulder was visible above the sheet, her bite, proof of her claim on him. How do you feel? He asked softly. Different, she considered it. Stronger, more, settled, like I was a puzzle piece that finally found where I belong. That's the completed bond. His fingers traced idle patterns on her bare shoulder. You'll notice other changes too. Your senses will be sharper, your healing faster, and you'll start developing some of my abilities: enhanced strength, better instincts, the ability to command lower-ranking wolves. I can command people? Through the bond, you carry some of my authority. Not all of it, I'm still the Alpha King, but enough that other wolves will instinctively respect you. It's how Alpha-Omega bonds work when both parties are powerful. He smiled. Though knowing you, you won't abuse it. How do you know that? Because I can feel your heart now. He tapped her chest gently. I know you're kind. Even when you're hurting. That you're fair. Even when you're angry. That you value justice over vengeance. It's why you'll make an incredible queen. Before Freya could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. "Your Majesty?" Sarah's voice called from the hallway. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation that requires immediate attention." Cale sighed and called back. "Give us 10 minutes. You have 5, it's urgent." They dressed quickly, Freya, in one of the beautiful dresses from her wardrobe, Cale in his formal attire. When they opened the door, Sarah stood waiting with an expression that was half amusement, half concern. "Let me guess," Cale said dryly. "The entire palace knows we completed the bond last night." "The entire capital knows," Sarah corrected. The bond light was visible for miles. Every wolf within 20 kilometers felt the power surge when you claimed each other. There are crowds gathering outside the palace gates wanting to see the new queen, and, she paused, "We've received formal requests from 6 different pack alphas asking for audiences to discuss your mating and what it means for territorial politics." "Of course we have." Cale ran a hand through his hair. "Can't even enjoy one morning of peace before everyone wants something." "Welcome to being royalty," Sarah said cheerfully. Then she turned to Freya, her expression warming. "But before we deal with all that, welcome to the family, sister." Officially this time. She pulled Freya into a hug that was surprisingly tight, and Freya felt tears prick her eyes. She'd lost her birth family, but she'd gained a new one that actually wanted her. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet," Sarah said, pulling back with a grin. Being part of this family means dealing with Cale's brooding, endless political meetings, and people constantly trying to kill you for political advantage. But her smile turned fierce. "It also means you have an entire pack ready to die protecting you. So there's that." "Very reassuring," Freya said dryly. "I try." Sarah gestured down the hallway. "Now come on. We need to start planning your coronation ceremony, and the sooner we get it done, the sooner the other packs will stop circling like sharks smelling blood in the water." As they walked through the palace, Cale's hand warm in hers, Sarah chattering about ceremony details, guards bowing as they passed. Freya felt the weight of her new reality settling on her shoulders. She was a queen now, with responsibilities, expectations, and an entire pack watching to see if she'd measure up. But through the bond, she felt Cale's absolute confidence in her. His certainty that she was exactly what the Blood Moon pack needed. And for the first time in her life, Freya believed she might actually be enough. More than enough. Exactly what she was always meant to be. Chapter 10. The Queen's Crown. The coronation ceremony was scheduled for 3 days later, just enough time to prepare but not so long that the other packs could scheme or object. Cale wanted Freya officially crowned before anyone could challenge the legitimacy of their bond or her right to rule. Those 3 days were a whirlwind. Freya met with advisors who taught her pack law and territorial politics. She trained with Sarah in basic combat. Every queen should know how to defend herself, Sarah insisted while teaching her knife work. She studied the history of the Blood Moon pack, learning about the queens who'd come before her, especially her predecessor, the last dormant Omega who'd ruled 60 years and changed the world. And through it all, Cale was beside her. Patient when she was frustrated, encouraging when she doubted herself, proud when she succeeded. The bond between them grew deeper each day. She could sense his thoughts now, not just his emotions, could feel when he was in meetings, when he was training, when he was thinking about her, and he could feel the same from her. It should have been invasive. Instead, it felt like finally being completely known. On the morning of the coronation, Freya woke before dawn to find Beatrice already in her chambers with an army of attendants. "Today you become queen," Beatrice said with warm pride. "We need to make you look the part." The preparation took hours. A bath in water scented with moonflowers and silver sage herbs sacred to the moon goddess. Her hair styled in an intricate pattern that incorporated thin silver chains woven through the dark strands. Makeup applied with careful precision to enhance her features without hiding them. And finally, the dress. It was a masterpiece, midnight blue silk that seemed to shift between blue and black, depending on the light, with silver embroidery that depicted wolves running beneath a full moon. The bodice fit perfectly, and the skirt flowed like water when she moved. It was both elegant and powerful, beautiful and commanding. "You look like a queen," Beatrice said softly, her eyes bright with tears. Freya stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Gone was the uncertain girl who'd been sold by her family. In her place stood someone who looked like she belonged in a palace, like she was meant to wear a crown. Through the bond, she felt Cale's reaction the moment he saw her: hunger, pride, possessive satisfaction, and underneath it all, love so deep it made her breath catch. "You're beautiful," his thought whispered through their connection. "My queen. My mate. Mine. Yours," she agreed, sending back her own wave of love and acceptance. The coronation was held in the palace's great hall, a massive space that could hold thousands of wolves. Every high-ranking member of the Blood Moon Pack was present, along with delegations from the 6 neighboring territories. The hall was decorated in silver and black, and moonstone crystals hung from the ceiling, casting shifting patterns of light across the crowd. Freya stood at the entrance with Sarah, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Through the crowd, she could see the throne dais where Cale stood in his formal robes, his crown catching the light, his silver eyes fixed on the doorway, waiting for her. "Nervous?" Sarah asked quietly. "Terrified," Freya admitted. "Good. That means you understand what you're taking on." Sarah squeezed her hand. "But you can do this. You were literally made for this. The goddess doesn't create dormant omegas and bond them to alpha kings by accident. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." The ceremonial horns sounded deep, resonant notes that echoed through the hall. The crowd fell silent, thousands of eyes turning toward the entrance. "That's your cue," Sarah murmured. "Go claim your crown." Freya stepped into the hall, and the crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in a gesture of respect. Every single wolf dropped to one knee, heads bowed, acknowledging her right to rule. It was overwhelming, humbling, terrifying, but Freya kept her head high and walked down the silver carpet toward the throne, toward Cale, toward her future. When she reached the dais, Cale descended to meet her. Up close, she could see the emotion in his silver eyes: pride, love, barely contained possessiveness. "My Omega," he said, loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "My mate, my equal in all things." He took her hand and led her up the steps to stand before the throne. Aldrich stepped forward, ancient and dignified in ceremonial robes, carrying a silver crown on a velvet cushion. "Freya of Ashwood," Aldrich's voice rang out. "You have been chosen by the moon goddess herself to stand beside the Alpha King. You have proven your strength, your courage, and your worth. Do you accept the responsibility of leading the Blood Moon Pack, of protecting its wolves, upholding its laws, and ensuring its prosperity for generations to come?" Freya's voice was steady and clear. "I do." "Do you swear to rule with wisdom and justice, to value all wolves regardless of rank, to be a beacon of hope for those who have none?" "I swear it." "Then by the authority granted to me by the Moon Goddess and the Blood Moon Pack," Aldrich lifted the crown, "I declare you Queen Freya Bloodmoon, mate to the Alpha King, Omega of legend, and Mother of the future." He placed the crown on her head, and the moment it touched her, power surged through the hall. Silver light exploded from where she stood, washing over every wolf present. Through the bond, Freya felt the pack's collective recognition: thousands of wolves acknowledging her as their queen, their leader, their protector. It was overwhelming, incredible, terrifying, and absolutely right. Cale took her hand and raised it high. "Your queen," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Long live the queen." The crowd roared back, the sound deafening. The celebration that followed lasted well into the night. There were formal presentations from pack members, gifts from the neighboring territories, toasts and speeches, and endless congratulations. Freya smiled until her face hurt, greeted hundreds of wolves whose names she'd never remember, and tried to project the confidence of someone who deserved to wear a crown. But through it all, Cale was beside her. His hand at her back, his presence in her mind, his absolute faith in her ability to do this. Finally, as the moon reached its peak, Cale led her from the celebration to the palace balcony that overlooked the capital. Below them, the city glowed with lights and celebration wolves dancing in the streets, howling their joy to the moon. "They love you already," Cale said softly, pulling her against his chest. They love what I represent, Freya corrected. Hope, change, the proof that the goddess still watches over them. They love you, he insisted. Because you're exactly what this pack needed. Someone who understands what it's like to be dismissed, to be told you're worthless. Someone who will fight for wolves who have no voice. Someone who will rule with compassion and strength in equal measure. Freya leaned back against him, staring out at the celebrating city. I keep waiting to wake up. To find out this is all a dream, and I'm still in Ashwood, still being told I'm broken. Not a dream. Cale's arms tightened around her. And even if you wake up tomorrow and discover this was all some elaborate fantasy, I'll still be here. Still yours. Still convinced you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Through the bond, she felt the absolute truth of his words. Felt his love, his devotion, his certainty that she was exactly who she was meant to be. I love you, Freya said quietly. She'd been feeling it for days but hadn't quite had the courage to say it aloud. Cale went very still behind her. Then he turned her in his arms, his silver eyes blazing with emotion. Say it again. I love you, Cale Bloodmoon. I love your strength and your vulnerability. I love your dedication to your pack and your faith in me. I love that you see my worth when I can't see it myself. I love. He kissed her, swallowing the rest of her words. When he finally pulled back, his voice was rough with emotion. I love you too. More than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You're not just my mate, you're my salvation, my purpose, my reason for everything. They stood on the balcony, wrapped in each other's arms, and Freya felt something shift inside her. A final piece falling into place, a last wall crumbling. She was complete. Truly, finally complete. Not because Cale completed her, she was whole on her own, but because he saw her wholeness, celebrated it, protected it, because he gave her a place where she could be exactly who she was meant to be. What happens now? Freya asked after a long moment of peaceful silence. Cale's smile was slow and full of promise. Now we build our future. We reform the territories, protect the vulnerable, and prove that strength comes in many forms. We have children who will be legends in their own right. We rule together, fight together, love together. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers in their now familiar gesture of intimacy. Now, he finished softly. We live the life the goddess always intended for us. The one we were both waiting for without knowing it. Together, Freya agreed. Always together. Epilogue. 6 months later. The gardens were in full bloom, more vibrant than they'd been in decades, Aldrich claimed. Flowers in every color imaginable. Trees heavy with fruit. The fountain's water catching sunlight and casting rainbows across the paths. They respond to the emotional state of the Alpha King, everyone kept saying. This is what happens when he's truly happy. Freya sat on a bench beneath a silver-barked tree, one hand resting on her slightly rounded belly, the other holding a book she was only half reading. The morning sickness had finally passed, and she was enjoying the peaceful second trimester of her first pregnancy. Through the bond, she felt Cale approaching before she saw him. He'd been in a council meeting all morning, something about territorial disputes that needed mediating, but now his attention was focused entirely on her. He appeared on the garden path moments later, still in his formal attire but already pulling off the restricting outer robe. His silver eyes found her immediately, and his expression softened in the way it only did when they were alone. "How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting beside her and immediately placing his hand over hers on her stomach. "Good. Hungry. The baby apparently wants honey cakes at all hours." She leaned against his shoulder. "How was the meeting?" "Tedious, but productive. The Eastern Territories have agreed to adopt our Omega protection laws. It's progress." His thumb stroked her belly gently. "Any movement today?" "Not yet. Aldrich says it's still too early." She smiled. "But I swear I can feel something, like a flutter, like recognition." "Our daughter recognizes her father's power," Cale said with absolute confidence. "You're so sure it's a girl?" "I'm sure." His smile was smug. "The goddess showed me in a dream last night. A daughter with your eyes and my power. She's going to be magnificent." "She's going to be spoiled," Freya corrected. "Between you and Sarah, This child will never hear the word no. Good. She deserves to be celebrated. Just like her mother deserves to be celebrated. He pulled Freya closer, and they sat in comfortable silence, the bond humming contentedly between them. 6 months since the coronation, and Freya still sometimes marveled at how different her life was. She was a queen now. Respected, valued, loved. She'd implemented education programs for Omega wolves across all territories, had established shelters for wolves fleeing abusive packs, had helped Cale reform laws that had been unjust for centuries, and she'd done it all while carrying the first child of the new Blood Moon dynasty, a child that would be the strongest Omega or Alpha born in generations, according to Aldrich's predictions. Do you ever regret it? Cale asked suddenly. Accepting the bond so quickly? Sometimes I wonder if I should have given you more time. Freya looked up at him, at the face she'd come to love more than she'd thought possible. The only thing I regret is not kissing you sooner. His laugh was warm and genuine. I'll accept that. A flash of movement caught Freya's eye, and she turned to see a messenger approaching young, nervous, clearly uncomfortable, interrupting the royal couple's private moment. Your Majesties, the messenger bowed. Forgive the intrusion, but there's a delegation at the gates. They're from the Ashwood pack. Freya tensed. Through the bond, she felt Cale's immediate shift to protectiveness. Magnus? She asked quietly. No, Your Majesty. It's... The messenger hesitated. It's your sister, Celeste. She's asking for asylum. Freya and Cale exchanged glances. Asylum meant trouble, meant Celeste was fleeing something, needed protection from her own pack. What happened? Cale asked sharply. She refused an arranged mating, the messenger explained. The alpha her parents chose was known for violence. When she rejected him, her parents disowned her, said she was ungrateful, just like... He trailed off uncomfortably. Just like me, Freya finished. She stood slowly, her hand still on her belly, her mind racing. Where is she now? At the main gates with the guards, awaiting your decision. Freya looked at Cale, and through the bond, she felt him leave the choice entirely to her. This was her decision, her family, her past coming back in a way she'd never expected. Bring her to the private receiving room, Freya said finally. I'll speak with her. 20 minutes later, Freya sat in a comfortable chair in one of the palace's smaller receiving rooms. Cale stood behind her, not controlling, but supporting. A silent reminder that she wasn't facing this alone. The door opened, and Celeste entered. Freya almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the glowing, confident girl who'd announced her courtship prospects. This Celeste looked thin, frightened, her eyes red from crying. Her clothes were travel-worn, and she carried a single bag everything she owned, apparently. Freya, Celeste's voice broke on the name. I'm sorry. I know I have no right to ask, but I didn't know where else to go. Sit, Freya said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Celeste sat, her hands twisting in her lap. I heard what you said to father and mother, about how they valued social standing over you, about how they made choices that hurt you. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I didn't understand then, but I do now. What happened? They arranged a mating for me with Alpha Garrett's older brother Marcus. He's wealthy, connected, everything they wanted for me. But he's also cruel. I heard stories from his previous mates about beatings, about isolation, about... She shuddered. I told them I wouldn't do it, that I wanted to wait, find someone I actually loved. And they disowned you. Freya guessed. Mother said I was being just as ungrateful as you were, that I was throwing away their sacrifices, ruining their plans. Father said, if I wouldn't mate Marcus, I was no daughter of his. Celeste's voice dropped to a whisper. They threw me out. Literally threw me out of the house I grew up in. Said I could end up like you, sold and forgotten. Except I wasn't forgotten, Freya said quietly. I was found. You were. Celeste's eyes traveled to the crown on Freya's head, to her hand resting on her pregnant belly, to Cale standing proud and protective behind her. You became everything they said you couldn't be. And I, her voice cracked, I became exactly what they made you. Worthless. Thrown away. Alone. Freya felt Cale's presence in her mind, not telling her what to do, but reminding her that she had the power to choose. She could turn Celeste away, let her experience the same rejection Freya had faced. It would be justice of a sort. Or she could be better than her parents had been. Could break the cycle of cruelty and conditional love. You have asylum, Freya said finally. You can stay here, in the Blood Moon Pack, under my protection. You'll be given quarters, work if you want it, and safety from anyone trying to force you into a mating you don't want. Celeste's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll work hard. I'll do anything. But, Freya interrupted firmly, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because we're family. I'm doing this because I won't become like our parents. I won't throw away someone who needs help just because they hurt me in the past. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Celeste's. You treated me with pity and condescension my whole life. You never stood up for me when they belittled me. You enjoyed being the favorite while I suffered. Those things hurt. And I haven't forgotten them. I know, Celeste whispered. I'm sorry. I was young and stupid, and I didn't understand. But, Freya continued, I also understand that you were a product of how you were raised, just like I was, and now you have a chance to become something different, someone better. So here's my offer. Stay here, heal, figure out who you are when you're not trying to please parents who only love conditionally. And maybe we can build something new. Not the sisterhood we should have had, but something honest. Celeste was openly crying now. I don't deserve your kindness. Probably not, Freya agreed. But I'm giving it anyway, because that's what real strength looks like, not revenge, but choosing to be better than the people who hurt you. Through the bond, she felt Cale's pride, his love, his absolute conviction that she was the most incredible person he'd ever known. Thank you. Celeste managed through her tears. I promise I'll prove I'm worth this second chance. We'll see, Freya said, but her voice was gentler now. Sarah will show you to your quarters and help you get settled. We'll talk more later, once you've had time to rest. After Celeste was escorted out, Freya sat in silence for a moment, processing what had just happened. Cale moved around to sit beside her, pulling her against his chest. That was incredibly mature of you, he said softly. Or, incredibly stupid. No. It was proof that you're exactly the queen this pack needs. Someone who leads with compassion without being weak. Someone who remembers what it's like to need help and actually provides it. Freya leaned into him, letting his steady presence ground her. Do you think she'll change? Or am I just setting myself up to be hurt again? I don't know, Cale said honestly. But I know you'll handle it either way. And I know that choosing mercy over vengeance is always the harder path, which is why it's usually the right one. They sat together in the receiving room, and Freya felt the weight of her choices settling on her shoulders. Queen, mate, soon-to-be mother, sister again maybe, if Celeste proved herself worthy of the title. It was a lot. Sometimes too much. But through the bond, she felt Cale's absolute faith in her. Felt his love, his support, his certainty that she could handle anything the world threw at her. And maybe, just maybe, he was right. If Freya's journey from traded daughter to queen resonates with you, if you believe in the power of choosing compassion over bitterness, please subscribe. Join those who understand that true strength isn't about revenge. It's about becoming better than the people who hurt you. Your support means everything. That night, Freya stood in the gardens under the full moon, her hand on her belly, feeling the first real flutter of movement from her daughter. Kyle stood beside her, his own hand covering hers, his silver eyes bright with joy. She's active tonight, he murmured. She knows her father is near. Freya smiled. She already recognizes your power. She's going to be extraordinary, Cale said with absolute conviction. Just like her mother. As they stood there, bathed in moonlight, Freya thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain of rejection, the humiliation of being sold, the terror of the unknown, but also the joy of being found, the strength of being valued, the peace of finally belonging. Thank you, she whispered to the moon, to the goddess who'd orchestrated everything. Thank you for making me wait. for letting me experience the darkness so I could truly appreciate the light, for giving me Cale, for giving me this life. The moon seemed to glow brighter in response, and Freya felt it the goddess's acknowledgement. Her blessing. You were always meant for this. The moon seemed to whisper. You were always enough. You just needed to believe it. Cale pulled her closer, and they stood together under the moon's light. Alpha King and Omega Queen, true mates, partners in every way that mattered. And as their daughter kicked again, stronger this time, Freya knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning. Her parents had traded her because they thought she was worthless, but the moon goddess had other plans, and those plans had led her exactly where she was always meant to be. Home. Thank you for joining Freya on her journey from worthless to priceless, from traded to treasured. If stories of resilience, true love, and finding your worth inspire you, make sure you subscribe to experience more tales where the underestimated become extraordinary. Because sometimes, the ones the world discards are exactly the ones destined for greatness.